Show. I am joined by Nick and I'm joined by Tom on what is known as Ladies' Night. Thank you for being here live wherever you're watching us from, whether you're watching on Facebook, on Twitch, or on YouTube. We prefer you watching on Twitch though, because that means you get to do the cool little subscribing thing. And thank you for doing so. That's the best. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well, thank you. Got my tea. A hot drink for a hot day. Perfect.
That's weird, but okay. Tom, how are you?
I'm even better now that I've seen that you've upped the press-up costs, Rob.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's I've definitely done that. If you guys don't know this, if you're on Twitch, you can check us out and check out if you watch, you gain channel points and then you can use them to make us do things. I suggest you don't, but hello, Dudar Day.
It really ruins the podcast if you do that.
So Tom just redeemed a shout out. So shout out to Rograx in the chat. What up?
You've got to read out his message, Nikos. Come on. Disgusting.
Thank you for thank you for upping the press up cost.
There you go. Damn right.
That's how you do it. So hello everyone watching us live. Oh my god, Jim Vessel, amazing. Yeah. 40k Bunny.
I don't think he's gone to sleep yet.
Full
we were
Greamer.
watching Canhammer at like 3 a.m.
Well, Darren is amazing. Was it Darren who was on Canhammer?
Yeah, Darren and Chris, yeah.
Oh, I fucking love those guys. So hello, everyone watching us live. If you are listening to the podcast, please stay hydrated. Tom, you've been staying particularly hydrated recently.
Yep. As I was saying to the guys before on the show, I played a TTS game yesterday for 4 hours and I had 7 wheeze. Because I am staying really hydrated.
Okay, that might need to be something you check, but I'm not sure. And also, a big shout out to everyone on the Wrestle Game Patreon. We couldn't actually do this full time without you, so thank you for doing so. The subject of today's show is going to be all of the 40k stuff that we've been absorbing. So there is obviously 9th edition 40k news and information for us to talk through. There's also AdMech, Chaos, and Night information that has come out because of Engine War. Now, obviously, this has come from the community articles, so half of it's going to be hyperbole. But there's some cool information there. I'm very excited to talk through that. But before we do either of those things, I always like to check on you both. Nick, you done any hobby recently? What's been going on?
I've not done loads of hobby recently. Because when the lockdown first started, I like smashed out a load of Orc Boys, and then I was playing some Total War. But I've been painting some Necron weapons to add to one of my planes, because one of my planes was an eBay salvage and didn't come with any weapons. So I just took one little gun on it. So I'm just painting up a couple of more little guns to stick on that plane. And that's about it, really. Hobby. I've played a game, but it was a game of Bolt Action on TTS, so that doesn't really count for the 40k show.
It doesn't. But thanks for bringing it up. Bolt Action, really good. Are you prepping? They have said
I'm prepping for 9th edition.
Well, no, they've said some clarity. No, they've said some clarity in there. Are the rounds and activations working any differently? And they've said no. That was part of the Q&A. So we won't be seeing anything like that happening. Tom, I know, sad news.
That's the only reason I was playing Bolt Action ever.
And because it's good, right?
Yeah.
Tom, have you done any 40k, 4DK?
Not too much. I've continued with my cabinets, sorting all those out, putting the models back in the cabinets so I can get them all sorted. I've also green stuffed the base of a Raptor, which I'm going to turn into a Chaos Lord because for some reason I only have one of them.
Okay.
And I played a game of TTS yesterday, which went quite well. I played against a Salamander Successor army with 2 Repulsors, and it had a Librarian with Null Zone, and obviously I had 1 squad of Paladins, 2 squads of Interceptors, and 1 squad of Purgs, and then the rest just characters and strikes. And I decided to see what would happen if I took my squad of Paladins and I lobbed it straight at the enemy army with Null Zone.
Yes.
And the answer was they killed 7 Paladins with Null Zone with their entire army. And that was it.
Wow.
So, yeah. Don't need no invulnerable save boy.
Because of all the strats that you can give them, what's it?
So I gave him -1 damage, which didn't actually make any difference because I thought that his heavy Incendium cannon on his 3 Invictus was damage 2, and it wasn't. And the Repulsor was doing flat 3 damage anyway, and it was just killing things, basically. So it didn't actually make any difference because he just rolled a 5 for his only wound. And then, yeah.
That's it.
And then you can use Transhuman as well, can't you?
Yes, I did. I could, but I didn't in that phase. I instead used it in the assault phase when he charged me with an Invicta Warsuit and a squad of 6 aggressors. And after all that, they killed 7 paladins, and then the rest of my army came down and murdered everything, and it was great. So
Okay.
yeah,
So 8th edition just powering it up like it always does.
even if you power me down, it doesn't matter.
Good. All right,
Too
I'll
much.
be excited to talk about that. Big shout out to Temporal Trash for subscribing. Thank you. And also thank you to Adam Karak for following us, you weird creep.
Where is he?
Yeah, stop it. You're not even meant to be here. Good evening, Russ, Pun Stuff, Dan Don't. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I have been, if anyone's interested, 40k wise, I have been digging through my AdMech collection to see exactly what I've got. The answer is a lot.
Do you have any cataphrons?
I have 12 cataphrons with plasma culverins. Is that correct?
There you go. That's a good choice.
Nailed it. And I was wondering, I was having a look, and I was like, what would this take to get these to tabletop standard? As I've just on the final leg of my blue horror, doing 100 blue horrors. So I think I might try and do a couple of more Tzeentch units, especially ones that are 40k competent. So like a couple of Lords of Change, because I've got 2. Get them done because they're AOS 40k variable, and I think I'll put AdMech below until we actually see the updates, because I don't want to paint anything because as we've seen from when we talk AdMech later, some of the units that I have, I never got on board with the new AdMech vehicles, as I think that they look like hot garbage. I know that in the game that they are hot fire. But,
The score pieces.
Yes. Yeah, or even the transports.
I mean, no one knows that because the only place you can find the rules is in their kit.
I can't wait for you to talk about that later. That hot burning fire is going to be really good. Oh yes,
Rob,
I can't see.
I've seen some of the conversions that you've done though for AOS. Have you got a grand conversion that you think you might be able to do for that kit?
No, because there's no bases, right? This is why I think vehicles should be on bases in 40k. Just saying it. Yeah, there's no bases, so that means I'm not able to do some funky kit bashes or anything. Like maybe I could take the hull and do something with it, but it's the hull that's the issue, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not a well. I was going to say it's a bit boxy, but the Rhino's boxy, and I think that looks fine.
That's the design aesthetic, though.
If you compare it to the Forge World stuff, which is truly beautiful, and as the owner of 4 Triaris armored conveyors, I'm just like, please. If they did the Malkador Explorer, Explorator, I think it's called actually, and they put that anyway. I'm just getting excited about AdMech.
It reminded me of something though, Rob. I have done some more assembling actually. I assembled 3 Blood Angels Razorbacks with the Forge World doors. I've had those sitting around for a while, and I decided to finally put them in the cabinet. So they're well done.
Okay.
Down there somewhere.
I'd just like to tell Asrank in the chat that Finland sucks, and the
Wow.
AdMech aesthetic is spot on, and also fuck swans. Anyway,
No, thank you.
right. So let's just jump straight in if that's okay, and let's talk about. We'll talk about 9th edition first, which might be an odd way round. But we'll do 9th edition AdMech Chaos Knights, if that's okay with you guys. Is that a good process?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've got Imperial Knights as well written down.
And Imperial Knights as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through... Sorry, Azrak. I really like you, though, as a person. So big shout out to Alan Drell, who wrote out the Q&A information that we got the other day. I guess... we were online, all of us, when we actually found out about 9th edition. So we've had this conversation if you want to go back on Saturday. So we don't need to cover that ground. I think since then, it's the Q&A information that we should talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just a quick question before we go any further. Have you guys settled in, or is any more of the information that came out from the weekend, is there any of it that you've walked away from and if you had to think about? And is there anything, what's the thing that you're most interested in? What's the thing that you're least bothered about?
I can start on that one. I'm really interested in the reserve changes. I want to see what they do, and how they rework that entire side of the game, because that can create an interesting dynamic in terms of what you agree to trade. Like in the game I played yesterday, I had a bit of a discussion with myself about whether or not I just drop 1 squad of strikes, which I knew would die if I do it, but it would give me an extra smite so I can have a better chance of killing the repulsor. And as it happened, I needed that squad to kill it, and I lost them, but it was a case of, well, I'm now trading. So I'd really like to see how they rework the reserve rules to make it more interactive and more interesting for potential trades, rather than just being turn one, I shoot all your stuff off because it has to be there.
Yep, that seems fair. So that's the thing you're most excited about. Is there anything you're least bothered about?
But I've already spoken about the terrain rules. I should be really hyped for the terrain rework, but I've seen so many terrain reworks where I just haven't been particularly interested in it, and it hasn't really fixed any of the issues, or it's created more issues. I've just not particularly seen terrain rules that have been particularly well liked, and therefore I'm a little bit pessimistic when it comes to seeing what they're going to do with that.
Okay.
But I think what they have said about the terrain rules is that they will be blocking line of sight, which I think is one of the best bits of news I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've defined one type of terrain as obscuring or something like that. So I think I think that's a good fix for the game, but also it's a good fix for them as a company in the terrain that they sell, because they'd like to sell really fancy looking terrain, which is got windows and they can design whatever they want now, and it functions better in the game rather than them having to let's make a big block brutalist building, which is just a big square which blocks all that line of sight. They can just go nuts with the terrain, and if it's defined as obscuring, then it's fitting in the game.
Issues. It'll just be bottom floor of ruins, though, right?
Yeah, well, I've got some good insight on this, because I actually had a conversation just as 8th edition occurred with Ray Dransfield. So he works in hobby products, and he's the lead designer for the scenery, both for Age of Sigmar and 40k. And we had a conversation, and he talked to me about all the problems that they face in production, because effectively, if you did make a big box, as aesthetically unpleasing, they could make that look quite nice, right? Could have really nice, a really nice side panel or whatever it might be, but it's the physical weight of plastic that you would be shipping and selling, which doesn't really work in shipment. It doesn't work in containers. It doesn't work in boxing. It doesn't work in storefront. Actually having it in the store. So we had that conversation, and I was like, oh, okay. So the reason there's loads of holes in it is so it's lighter, basically.
So it's cheaper.
Yeah,
it's not just a slab.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, that makes loads of sense. Now I understand loads more. That was cool. So we had that conversation. And so the thing I'm most excited about is the terrain rules, actually, Tom. But I can understand how you feel, but I think if they've finally just jumped away from what you're seeing and you're doing a bit of imagination, because it's already a game of imagination, we might see some really interesting stuff. And I want to say a big shout out to Rambo Squirrel, who I think I saw in the chat earlier, when we talked about Marvel Crisis Protocol and the fact that they have types of terrain defined. So you have a shape of terrain or a size of terrain, and it's got its own rules. I love that, especially from the dynamics of creating boards. Let's say there's just large, medium, and small terrain. It's got its own special rules, as basic as that. Mm-hmm. Ignoring that, and large always blocks LOS. I'm like, that's amazing. So I can create a forest. That's the shape. It doesn't all have to be cityscapes. I could create a forest, and this is the footprint, and that footprint is line of sight blocking. Does that make sense? I think that's awesome. Yeah, so I'm actually really, really excited about the terrain. I think terrain and army building, but army building's got so much involved with it. Command points, no detachments, a whole bunch of stuff. Some of this we'll talk about now. So, and the thing that I'm least interested in, I don't know. Come back to me. Nick, what about you?
Okay. Well, I think that one of the things that I was most excited about is army building again, because since the lockdown all happened and we can't go to tournaments, I think I've written a couple of lists, but to really sit down and thrash out a list, I feel like you need a tournament and the rule set and the environment that you're going into defined to really motivate me to scheme a list and write a list. And obviously now we know 9th edition is coming out. What's the point scheming an 8th edition list, because it's all going to change, and that's exciting because it will be a new way of writing a list. We know that command points are going to be fixed, and probably if you go mono, you'll get more command points. And they've said explicitly that if you want to bring allies in, you'll pay CP for that. And they've said that they'll still have detachments, which I think is going to be interesting to see exactly how that works. Because I think there'll be some sort of incentive for having certain certain detachments. I hope.
I believe there was the context of it'll cost you points to get allies in was you'd have to take a different detachment, and the detachment's going to cost you command points. So rather than detachments awarding you CP, detachments now cost because you're making your army bigger and more unwieldy.
Okay, so for like it could be, I want a battalion of guard in my knights army, and it's going to cost me 5 CP because a battalion used to generate 5 CP or something like that.
Yeah. Something like that. I don't know if it'd be as much as 5, but they did specifically say they wanted to remove the idea of a command point battery, and they actually used those words. They wanted to remove CP batteries. Yeah. So yeah, that's something we're looking to address.
I think that's honestly really interesting. Big shout out to Bobby Halls on YouTube, who's come in with the Ninth Sucks, sell your models. You carry on, Bobby Halls. Yeah, you live your life. Thanks Nubgun for subscribing. Is someone drumming? What are you two drumming?
I can hear it as well.
There you go, Nick. It's definitely you. Definitely you.
My coffee mug away.
He's got a really fancy microphone and a really fancy webcam, which means we can hear and see everything. You can't get away with anything anymore.
You can't mess about anymore.
You should get a shitty webcam like me.
Anyway, line of sight I'm really interested in, says Undead Ben, as it really annoys me that my opponent's las cannons can shoot my bloodthirster because they can draw a line to the territipity of his wings. But I think that's fine. I think I'm excited to see terrain. Army building is also really interesting as well. I'm going to say something now, a bit of wishing. I personally hope it's mono subfaction. Not only mono book, mono subfaction. Just going to call it here. Like, I want there to be the risk and reward of this. I want this unit in my army, but I don't get reroll ones with this particular unit. Instead, I get it with the other part of my army that gets reroll ones. Does that make sense? I want it to be mono. I think more mono the better, but that's just me wish listing. So anyway, let's go through the information.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a least favorite part, if I'm honest. I'm also super excited about the thing that I'm probably most trepidatious about is buying into the bullshit and how much of it's actually hyperbole and how much is actually going to be real world good information. But we will find out.
Yeah, well, I guess the thing I'm least looking forward to then is what they haven't told us.
They've only told us the good bits.
Because they're gonna release all the stuff that everyone's happy about and is gonna get people excited. Like, I'm sure there's things that they haven't told us that might cause a stir or not be good.
Oh, well, I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm hoping they get rid of rerolls in some mechanic, but we again will find out. Okay, let's talk about some of these Q&As. Big shout out to Alan Droll, who. So we're going to go through these. So question was, what can Horde armies look forward to? The answer was lots of things to help them. Assault terrain will be more meaningful. It will block line of sight a lot more. So they apparently described what it sounds like a keyword system to easily assign rules to your terrain. Easier for armies to get into and cling to cover as they move across the board. More guidance about the amount of recommended terrain. How do you guys feel about that?
Really good change.
I'd need to see it in full context to know.
Okay, Nick, you're going to have to carry most of this one because that's going to be Tom's answer.
Well, for this section it will be, which is why I go into more context with the AdMech thing. But the main thing is, I could say something's really good and then they apply it in a certain way where I'm not a massive fan of that. For example, like they could just say, "Oh, this entire piece of terrain blocks line of sight," and then it's just like really long, and I'm like, "Well, what am I meant to do?"
Yes. I think the fact that it's keyworded, I actually think sounds very competent. Like it's got X rule.
They're keywording everything, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Personally, I think that's spot on. Yeah, because that sounds like it's less like, oh, is this a crater or is that a crater? It's like, and they've normally attached. They also have to be really conscious, don't they, as well? Like
homemade terrain.
Yeah. They just have to admit it. Like, you go to the LVO, you go to the LGT, you go to Adepticon, you go to Worlds, it's not their terrain. They are losing the market on building and producing terrain. So accept that and create rules for your game system. You'll sell more models, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good thing because the Nova L has become famous now, and it is very functional in the game and helps make the game better, but oftentimes it is just an L-shaped bit of NDF and it looks a bit crap. So if these rules are really good and it allows gaming boards to look amazing and also play really well functionally, then that's just
Yeah.
going to make the game so much better.
Way
Yeah,
better
absolutely.
because it does two things at once, doesn't it? It looks better, it works better, which
Yeah.
has always been the great conversation. Tom, always a really solid point, which I've agreed with from you, is the Nova Elves might suck, but they're super functional. Like they might
Yeah.
look like trash, but they work. And I'm like, that's a good argument. That's impossible to argue against. But now I can have a board that looks great, so I'm into that. Anyway,
Yeah, they did expand a bit on that though. They also said there's changes to Overwatch coming in the same answer, and the core stratagems to address the ease of enemy falling back without penalty will be introduced as well.
Yeah. So changes to Overwatch stratagems to address the ease of the enemy falling back without penalty. So it sounds like that there's going to be a lot more core stratagems, which I find like. So we've got like, how do you feel about there being a more level playing field where everyone has access to like the ability to do X? Like as an example, there's core stratagems to stop that. What if there's a core vect? What if there's a core stratagem of vect? How would you feel about that?
I guess it depends how many points it is. Like if it's cheaper than already Vect, then that'd be just stupid. But if it's more expensive, then it helps keep the original Vect, like keep its uniqueness. But yeah, I guess it's a good thing. For me, it would have to be a lot of points, like I don't know, 5 or 6. Like I really want that. I'd like that decision to deny a particularly good stratagem to be very, very costly to you, because I'm not a massive huge. I can see the benefit of having a Vect in the ecosystem, but I'm not a huge fan of it because it's kind of like I turn up to the table and I go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this awesome thing," and your opponent's just like, "No, you're not."
I love that though. Someone like turns up and is like because you there's more risk in building your army to be more skewed towards only one stratagem that like makes your army uber powerful. Like, and I think it, but never mind. I think the idea of core stratagems is cool because we'll all learn a little bit more, and also we'll all have access to the same sort of idea, right? But it sounds like if there's stratagems,
nice.
if I have to spend CP to take allies, if I have to take CP to get certain battalions, and there's also core stratagems available as well. It sounds like there's a lot of CP being used just in the game, like maybe even before you get to the game and in the game, right? It's quite. It's even more of a important mechanic having CP and using it wisely. There's going to be a lot of argument of is X worth X, I think, in the future, which is cool because that makes
That's good though. It's a value judgment. Yeah.
And value judgments separate the weak from the strong. So are core turn mechanics changing? No.
Right, there we are.
There we are. We're done on that one. Strategic I know, but I think. The other thing, which we didn't talk about later, well, we could talk about now, is they have said that there seems to be a major rework to Battle Shock and Bravery, to morale, basically.
Right, yeah.
Go on, Tom.
So they were talking about this earlier. They said they didn't want to change it too much, but they were aware that it wasn't really that valuable. So what they are doing is they're introducing morale into more areas of the game and giving the leadership value more impotence, right? So, like, you would have certain areas of the game where you need to use your leadership value, and therefore it's actually important, rather than just now where, like, one difference in stat is the difference between losing a bottle and not losing a bottle in the event of a random dice roll with lots of control over it. Mm-hmm. So they are working on trying to increase how important that stat is and how important morale as a whole is, which means Hemlock Ray fighters.
Yes. Well, I actually think the thing that seems like quite interesting about this. Hold on, which question are we on again? I just lost myself. Nick, what's your thoughts while I recatch myself? Sorry.
On the morale phase.
Yeah. There we go.
I missed a bit on that in the Q&A, but my wild speculation and hope is that it's more like kill team.
Yes.
So
we talked about this. Yeah.
So if your army starts with 10 units and you lose 5 units, then the more units you've lost affects your current units that are alive's morale, and that kind of makes sense. Like if you go into an army 100 men strong, you've got 50 left, the remaining 50 would be a bit nervous that they're losing and they've lost their buddies, so they might become more ineffectual as the game goes on.
It's also a nice way of buffing Marines without having to create like them having an uber powerful set of output or defense. Like if like the value of like having Marines and them being incredibly like they're having high leadership, like is currently lost effectively. But having that in a situation, so there's obviously Kill Team, there's also Lord of the Rings. So both of those are examples where obviously taking like an amount of attrition might affect your overall army. And we've also seen some versions of in the AdMech rules, we've seen the idea of pinning, haven't we, Tom?
What do you mean? Sorry, in the AdMech rules?
Oh, so
you mean suppression?
Yes, suppression.
That's just -1 to hit if you hit a unit, right?
Yeah, but like I think that we'll see suppression come in because of morale. That's how I feel.
You can do. I feel like that. So one of the things that they actually addressed in this Q&A, but was huge, was you can't go past -1 or +1 to hit. There's a cap, which means that if you're applying suppression, then it's not quite as valuable to get a -1 to hit because it means that you're invalidating all other sources of it. So, for example, if you're taking Styges, you never need to use suppression. If you got suppression, you never need other sources of -1 to hit, for example. So I don't know if they're going to expand on that and increase. They definitely made a big deal of it being called suppression, right? Yeah, I'm not dancing. So I don't know if they're going to add more things to it. You're very distracting. So, oh, for goodness sake. Whatever. Fine. So yeah, we might see them doing more things, but I'm not, overly,
It's okay.
I like the idea
Tom's lost his thread. There's people
you
doing.
guys completely threw me off.
I'm so sorry.
Don't
All right,
apologize.
This is like in
Terrible
betweeners,
idea.
but Tom, that makes you Neil.
Huh?
If we're the in betweeners, you're Neil.
Am I? All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm completed it, mate. And over
Jay.
here, yeah,
He streams on Twitch now.
he does stream on Twitch. Yeah, completed it, mate. Yeah, and questions in as to who Nick is, but Jay's dad. That's what I'm going for.
Jay's dad.
Right. Anyway, so like we jumped between two rules there, and I know obviously I don't want to just like labour the point sometimes, but I personally think that morale check thing is actually could be huge. What if like you've only got half your army left, and now you have to take morale checks to see if you're pinned? That's pretty big. Like Elmbird says, though, that's actually making morale too much about making what is left is effectively worse. It could lead to just more games ending with a concede more often. I'm not sure I'd like that.
It could make games snowball much harder. Definitely. I agree with that point, definitely.
So I actually I'd be very interested to see what they do with that. If not, there's just a bunch of leadership checks to see if you can do X, which obviously Orcs will never pass. So, yeah.
Okay, get that morale 30 used consistently, man.
Right, so, and then the -1 to and +1 hit. Tom, we talked about that. Have you got any strong thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like it. It means that you can't just run a unit into my face and have me do nothing. It does mean that Tau are potentially better, though. Because that was one of the things that was causing Tau massive issues, specifically with Plague Bearers, where you could stick Miasma of Pestilence plus the natural -1 to hit on them to give them a -2 and make them incredibly durable. Another kick in the balls for Chaos, as it were, alongside the Possessed Star as well. There's plenty of things that messes up, mainly Chaos, but also it kind of caused issues for some of the Eldar armies as well.
Nick, what do you think about the +1 -1? By the way, thank you, Tom, for saying it. I love that it fucks up Eldar. Like, I love it. Today when we were
I
just...
only said that under the pretense that it fucks up Chaos more.
Okay, good. But I just want you to know I'm really happy it fucks up Eldar. Nick, what are your thoughts?
I don't like love it or hate it. I think it's a good change, because particularly if someone just throws something in your face and it's like a million minuses to hit, it just feels very uninteractive. Like there's literally nothing you can do about it. So I think it's a really good change. Yes, on the one hand it might nerf, be a buff for Tau, but they've also said that Overwatch is changing, so that's also potentially a negative for Tau. So that might balance things out.
Yes. So I've got that bit here and now. Changes to Overwatch: core stratagems to address the enemy ease of falling back. So I think that's the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah, they've said there's a change to Overwatch. I don't think they've necessarily expanded on what that might be, but wild speculation might be that you can only fire one unit. A unit can only fire once per Overwatch phase. Because that would it is a bit weird, like if you have one unit of Marines being charged by multiple different units, like they're firing like so many times within this short space of time. Like it would kind of make sense that they can only fire once.
Just very quickly on the -1 to hit thing, I just realised if you've got a heavy weapon and you're firing at something that's already -1, you might as well move.
Yes,
there was some wild speculation though. I don't know, but if you like my flyer negative modifier might be capped at 1, but yours might go in addition to that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, so I think the interesting thing
is
is if it's just cap plus and -1, but if your pluses to hit and your minuses to hit kind of balance out, right? So you want to be -3 to hit, but it's only ever going to be -1. But if someone ends up with +2 to hit, then you're in a good spot because actually there's still that -1 to hit. So it probably doesn't have as much value, but I still think that the idea of having -1 to hit unit and then another way of putting -1 to hit on it in case someone has +1 to hit is a value to maybe have. But I think that's cool. More on terrain. We've talked about that. How does the new edition help NIDs? Anything that tanks can do, monsters will do better. So that was one of the things. Tanks can shoot into combat, so monsters can shoot into combat as well. Seems like a positive. Yeah? You guys already seemed happy with that before, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I think they said in the Q&A was that it would be great for monsters because they'll be equally good at shooting and combat as well, which I don't necessarily agree with because generally, yeah, I think because Tom's point this.
I mean, the Terran effect is equally shit at both, so I guess that's the thing. But...
yeah, because generally a Tyranid monster, you're going to be gearing it to all shooting or all combat.
Yeah, you want to gear towards special.
So it's only really necessarily benefiting the shooty monsters, but
yeah.
That's
monsters
really
are kind of a weird example though, because often you have things like the Flying Hive Tyrant, which have like double twin devourers, but they still, they've still got the tail and like a scythe, so you can take like one twin devourer and a scythe, and you're just like, well, it's still quite useful and it's really cheap. So there are some rare exceptions, but yeah, for the most part, I agree with Nick on that one.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you as well. So, question: missions. Going back to 3 ways to play, make the game better. But never mind, don't care about that. They glossed over the missions for competitive play, so not too stressed.
They said that Mike had helped with them, but that was obvious. So
yes, that was. So the other thing is they fixed multi-level interactions. So
that'll be really good if they have fixed that in the terrain rules. That'll be insane, because that's the main thing that's been causing issues ever since I've started playing in 5th edition, where you would have issues with multi-level terrain.
Well, it's just a relook at terrain and the game space in which people are playing. If that's done really well, then all of those things, which have been had various insanely odd solutions over the past 2 years, right? We've seen all sorts from I'm 9 away, but I'm doing a 0-inch charge to you can't land on my building, bro. Yeah, get off of here. This is my land. So we've seen
using it to deep strike and then charge down. Yeah.
Yeah, how weird is that? So we've seen some really weird stuff. So that's why it's the very top for me. I think.
Knights even had a stratagem to get around it. They had a specific stratagem so knights could attack people.
Only gallants. Only gallants.
Was it only gallants?
Only gallants. Yeah.
Well, so Dude asked a question if we know whether or not Dude asked a question if we know whether or not it's shooting into combat or out of combat like some big tanks can. I think that the big tanks are going to keep that rule, but I just think the tanks are going to be able to shoot into combat. It's what you do in Age of Sigmar, and I think that that's a nice, elegant way of dealing with it personally.
You can't see my book on the camera, but.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hello to everyone who's joined us live, by the way. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate that tons. Right, we're going through the Q&A from the 40k Tuesday, and then we'll be talking about the AdMech.
No, it's not just gallants. It's, cool.
The other stuff. So, random number of shots still a thing. Yes, Blast helps even out some randomness, but still a thing. So there's also, to do with Blast, there's also the conversation about hordes, where they're going to define. They say it later on that they're going to define what hordes are. So you might get some other sort of next to the points, it might say that this is a horde unit. which would be interesting whether or not it's like 9 or more models. Some people are thinking it might be, but I wouldn't say 10 Marines is a horde of Marines, would you?
No, 10 doesn't feel like a horde.
I believe
no.
it's 11 or more. Is the wording they were using in the Psychic Awakening Engine War stuff for a few of the stratagems was 11. If the enemy unit has 11 or more models, you get this bonus. So I would be assuming that a horde will count as anything that is 11 or more.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a fairly good assumption as well. Oh, did you also see that they've announced well, they haven't announced it, but we know what the price of the starter box is. That it's 120 English pounds.
How do we know that?
Well, so what? It's a little side note. You just remembered it a minute ago. So effectively, they've done a competition online. If you sign up to the newsletter about new 40k, then in the terms and services, it said that they're going to give away like 11 boxes or some amount of boxes, but they've said each one of them will not exceed a value of X. Yeah. So it's clearly that's the price of the box.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's fun. That's a fun little. That's some clever people doing some TNA hacking there. All right. Okay. Talking about the rules, and 120 quid. It looks like a really big box, but I don't know. I don't really ever like getting into the price conversation. It just seems weird. Do you know what I mean?
Is it worth it to you? If so, buy it. If not, don't.
Exactly. And 60 quid to split it. That seems decent.
And it's not like the Prophecy of a Wolf, where the York side is clearly more valuable than the Space Marine side.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But it's all new models, and it is going to be the only way to get those. I imagine it's going to be the only way to get those bikers initially. So I think
and they're really cool.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see.
Are the new sniper guys, the Eliminators? They were only starter box for ages, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah, I think
ages.
I think they're going to sell a metric shit ton of that box. For at least, Nick, don't take this the wrong way, but at least because of all the Marine players that are out there are going to want the new Marine hotness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
what, you're saying no one's going to want the Necrons?
Not saying that. I wasn't saying that. I wasn't.
We'll have to see what's in the box.
What's wrong with Necrons?
I wasn't picking a side. I'm apolitical in this. Like, I don't pick the undead overlords or the space Nazis. Like, I don't have a choice.
Just
like,
the tone you said it in made it sound like.
As a lowly working class orc, I'm not getting involved. Yeah, like I just living my best life. Anyway, on to more of the other questions. Can non-vanilla chapters use the new Marines? Yes, available to all different chapters of Marines. So Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves have plans. Have plans for Death Watch and listening to community pretty soon after release. Sounds like Death Watch may have immediate access to units, as is though, so they might have immediate access.
Oh, that was when he said the thing, wasn't it? That was so funny.
Yeah, that was good. Whoops.
I'm not going to repeat it here, guys. If you want to see it, go back and watch Q&A on Twitch.
Anyway,
it's an awkward choice of words.
It was. So old Marines still here, still using them themselves. Lie. I call bullshit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Technically they're correct because you can still use them, but they're basically being, they're through rules they're being made irrelevant.
Do you feel like they're still here in that they're in the lore section getting like shafted for a while?
Possibly. Yeah.
That could work.
Yeah. The stories will be, the Primaris intercessors do this, Primaris captain does that. And then a Space Marine was also there in the corner.
Yeah. There was also an old Marine. Well, so we've seen some rumours today. So it was a fake rumour. A fake rumour. Where we saw a printed out image stuck on a codex. Anyway, this is taking too long. Doesn't matter. There's some cool narrative about the old Marines turning into the new Marines and how they get Primarised up, basically. But so if someone could link that in the chat, that would be
Well, I mean,
cool.
they did it to Ragnar, right? So therefore, it must be possible.
Well, yeah, it started with Calgar. Like they were like previously like we can't turn
I thought he was a thing,
we can't turn old Space Marines into new Space Marines because we're missing these organs. And then Calgar was like, try it on me, and then they like perfected it somehow. So now they can do it to everyone basically.
So I've got a solution for everybody who has a collection of old Marines.
Give them to you.
That's one option. You can give them to me for free if you wish. Support the show. But my other solution is that you just join the dark side. Go to Chaos.
Yes. Yes.
Like either strip them down, repaint them as Chaos, or just port them straight over to Chaos, because Chaos still use standard Space Marine models and bodies.
And there would be nothing more fun than using a tactical squad in all Ultramarines livery and just saying that they're something else, right?
It's Chaos, bro. Alpha Legion.
It's Chaos, bro. Alpha Legion every time. Yeah, that was it. They were the firstborn. Thank you very much. So it was the firstborn storyline, basically.
Do you think they're going to be? Do you think they're going to be hunted down like the Thunder Warriors?
Yeah, I do. I do think maybe even Primaris and Firstborn Civil War. What are you saying?
Mm-hmm.
The Horus? No, the Firstborn Heresy. Yeah.
There you go.
That'd be exciting.
Okay.
Horus Heresy 2.0.
Yeah, Elmbirds makes a good point as well, Nick. There's no way that Fabius Bile isn't going to lead into Primaris Chaos, so you're pretty screwed there,
yeah,
bud.
that's true. But
Sorry
until that happens, you got to probably at least a year, I reckon, before that comes out.
Oh, what? They've already shown him. Do you think?
Yeah, but I mean, until Primaris Chaos size stuff comes out.
Okay. Right. Someone's actually having a disco outside to celebrate whatever this is, like the 8 o'clock.
You're able to meet up with 6 people. Yeah, there you go.
They're having like a full disco. Anyway, so we're going on with more of the questions. Still using themselves though. What a lie. What other major characters may be returning? I just don't care about. Why ask that question, you idiots? A Vigilus book still available? Yes. Support for Forge World armies like the Death Corps of Krieg. This one is amazing and references new engine war. It looks like Forge World stuff that's relevant to the release is going to go into books, or the studio. Well, so the engine war has got all of the Forge World great demons in. Tom.
So the issue with this is it's going to cause Worlds a bit of an issue, which obviously is a completely selfish perspective. In that, how can you then ban it from your event if it's in the Codex?
But you don't. But the issue with Worlds previously, as I understood it, and the reason that Forge World was banned, as I get it, is because the rules were so incredibly janky and weird, yeah, and also sometimes hard to find. But now
it's one of the main issues, but it's not the main one. So one of the main issues that coincided with that was you have teams from all over the world coming, right? How accessible is it to play a Forge World unit if you are from Eastern Europe?
Yeah, the pay-to-win question.
Right. This was the thing. And we wanted all the units that you can play to be relatively accessible.
Yeah, I get that. I understand. I do understand. But
would you
Eastern
prefer
Europe,
us to play with Lego?
Well, I was just going to say,
we're actually okay with it.
Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe is actually closer to China, but obviously don't get anything from China because they're an evil regime. Right. True. So I think that's good personally, especially as an AdMech player. Woo! Give me my new AdMech book, which obviously
are they in a Psychic Awakening, AdMech?
Yeah, in the Engine War, in this one.
In this one. And are they all the Forge World units in that?
Okay.
Are they in that?
There's no need to talk about it, was there? Like,
are they not in there?
No, and you know that they're not in there. So fuck you. Anyway.
Well, you didn't have to start this war by dissing on Necrons earlier, so.
Okay. Vigilance book still usable. Can I always hit on 6s, please? Everyone always hits on 6s. Will new codices include Crusade elements? I literally don't care. How would you begin a Crusade army? I don't care. Blah, 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 blah. So core rules, are they still 8 pages or are they expanded? They're a little bit longer. To be fair to the Crusade thing, the answers did make it sound cool. Your units get XP. It's like Dungeons & Dragons. I could tell a story. If it's good, I'll read it and I'll get really into it, seriously into it, maybe tattoos, the whole thing, way too serious into it. That's if that's good. It sounded awesome, yeah? But if it's shit, like the Age of Sigmar version, then I don't have to get involved, so that's great. So, but it sounds fun. Are either of you two interested in Crusade?
Not necessarily. Because I don't necessarily play Warhammer for narrative style games and battles. That's what I play D&D for.
Okay.
Warhammer's more about, the match play and kicking ass and losing friends because I'm a dick on the table.
Oh, wow. Tom, thoughts? You're the narrative guy.
Sorry, I wasn't really paying attention because you said narrative, so I went to go and open some windows.
Proving he's the narrative guy.
Right. Anyway, Is power level still a thing? Yes. Never adjusting it was a mistake. We'll update over the new edition. Not as often as points, but we'll keep an eye on it to be useful, which is very useful to our friend Jonathan, who was on the show the other week, because the meta in his gaming club is an 80 power level meta. So he'll be excited about that being adjusted. Morale file change.
There's going to be a lot of work for battle roll or combat roster or whatever it is.
Yeah, combat roster is going to be hotting up. Yeah.
Everyone's using those power levels when they update them. Great.
Yeah. Make planes interact more differently than other models types. So this is about the +1, -1 to hit, +1 to hit. Less gamey interaction. So it sounds like flyers, or the flyer word, or maybe even just generally flyers, are going to get loads of additional rules added onto them. So some of the FAQ stuff might get baked into the rules. How do you guys feel about that?
I think that's hopefully they're good changes, because flyers seem really weird in 8th edition, because they have a small rectangle that they have to fly around in, and they can't ever leave that rectangle, and things couldn't at one point move past them, whereas I think it's going to hopefully make them feel more like actual flyers, doing strafing runs, like, coming onto the board, flying across, flying off, and then coming back again. So hopefully it makes them feel more like an actual flyer.
Yep. Tom, what are your thoughts on the flyers?
On the AdMech flyers, sorry.
No, not the AdMech flyers, on the flyer changes.
I've lost the Q&A. It's scrolled down.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it. Sorry, I'm just a bit distracted.
Do you want me to read it to you?
No, yeah, if you can do. I'm just trying to
so effectively what they said is that flyers are going to have additional rules so they feel less gamey. So
right, for the ability to fly flyers on and off the board.
I think even more than that. I think the things we'll see with movement blocking, I think any odd interactions that we might have seen, they might have tried to address, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. Because they
100%.
are they're a weird element to the game. More CP. CP allow people to do cool things and have control over the game. Then CP total based on game size, both players have the same. The rumor I've heard is that it's 1 CP for every 100 points played, so it would be 20 base. But obviously we don't know enough, so that's just a rumor, so whatever.
That feels a good number, though, for like 2,000 points.
It
20
does.
CP.
And then the interesting one here, would Crusade be suitable for running a narrative event or a convention or such? Yes! Lots of advice, starting points, and how to best progress can easily be used. It would be very interesting if they were trying to work out how to create a narrative event. Like, if they were, focusing on how to create a narrative event for gamers, for the gamers that want that, and the gamers that do want that, I think that's excellent. And it sounds like something I'd even be tempted to go to if it was robust enough to not allow, gimmicking, basically. But that sounds cool. Honestly, that's rad. Will future codices absorb Psychic Awakening and similar content? New codices will take the best of existing material from all sources. So it'll be all sorts of different bits. So can we trust Pete's whiteboard? Nick, your thoughts on this?
So I think so. When they announced 8th edition, Pete Foley had on the back of his whiteboard, he had some things, and they're putting them up to try and bamboozle us. But we're smart people here at the Honest War Gamer in the chat. So he had Plastic Sisters of Battle as like a bit of a meme, because it was like everyone was keep saying, "Oh, we want Plastic Sisters of Battle." I'll put it on my whiteboard as a bit of a joke, and then lo and behold, they released Plastic Sisters of Battle.
Yep.
So on one of his whiteboard, and one of the, I think it was either the release or the Q&A, he had like a tick list of squats, Tyranids, new Xenos race, and Space Marines. And obviously we know Space Marines are going to get a codex, so we know that that red herring is going to be true at some point. Tyranids, we know they're going to get another codex, so we can rule that one out. So that's new Xenos race or squats are either red herrings or definitely going to happen.
Oh, so you would, is this you claim? Would you like to make a bet right now? Which one of the two you're going for?
Well, I'd go for squats because that already exists in the lore. I think it'd be hard for them to just all of a sudden shoehorn the new Xenos race. Although they have done it with Tau before, they've just kind of created Tau out of nothing, as some models to sell to the east. But yeah, I think squats would be very cool to come back because I love the old retro models for them as well. And they've kind of already done. They've done one for Forge World, haven't they? And I was thinking they've kind of done some in the Blackstone Fortress one, but they're actually ratlings, aren't they? So
They are.
I don't know whether they.
Forge World have made squats. Like, and if anything,
Fake
we know,
squats, not real squats.
if anything, we know, as soon as Forge World makes something, the main studio get pissed. Like, they're like, we're going to make knights, and the main studio are like, how dare you? We'll make knights. It's like, oh, okay, all right, calm down. They're like,
we'll make bear knights, yeah.
Yeah, and then Forge were like,
pretty
ours are
much.
taller and bigger, and they were like, shit. Yeah, here's our all taller and bigger ones. They're like, okay. And then similarly, they were like, we're making Mechanicus stuff, and then the Citadel were like, oh, you're making Mechanicus stuff. So I think it's a good idea that, I think it's a good bet that they've started making squats. The Citadel guys won't be far behind, but that's just because of hubris, I think, more than anything. Okay, that's a good one. Next up. What defines blast weapons and horde? They said in the appendix in rulebooks defines existing. Future profiles, it will be a weapon type. Assault intercessors, chainswords. Do they have any special rules? Tom, your favourite question.
Sorry, do I have any special roles? I'm just being bombarded again. Sorry.
Astartes,
Just a chainsword.
Oh, right, yeah, they didn't really answer the question. That was the issue. They said, are they better than normal chainswords? And the answer was, wow, all chainswords are better than regular chainswords. And I'm just like, that's not really an answer, is it?
Aren't all chainswords just +1 attack?
Yes.
So they aren't better. They're
But I
the
think
same.
they kind of clarified a little bit by saying that like a guardsman chainsword will be worse than a space marine chainsword. Which I think we can safely assume it either is going to mean just +1 AP or +1 strength. I think the AP is probably more likely. So I think it might be a bit too good if they made them strength 5, or what do you reckon?
Well, couldn't they just be saying that if the chainsword's better because it's on an Astartes? That would seem
Maybe.
like the simple answer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, go on.
So a conspiracy theory that they want to, they've released Reavers in the last edition, and people may or may not have bought Reavers. If you're competitive, probably not, because they're not that great. But they all had combat knives. So it would make sense for them to release new intercessors with chainswords to invalidate the Reavers. So now you have to buy them.
Yeah, I mean, it would do that.
Just buy 80 of those, take them as iron hands with the grey shield, and running them at the enemy army, and then just put the grey shields.
Honestly, I don't hate the idea of combat like a combat horde marine army. Like, don't get me started on that.
Actual intercessors as well, because you don't have to buy the bolters. Then yeah, go for it.
Combat dudes look way cooler than a guy with a gun as well.
Yeah, you could put trophies on them, like scalps that they've collected, all sorts, all manner of goodness. So that seems to be all of the Q&A stuff, and big shout out to our man Alandrell again for writing that up.
Yeah.
I think that was awesome of him. So what's your big takeaways? Twitch chat, the same question to you. I'd like to know what everyone else's
capped
opinion is.
modifiers.
Okay, that's your big takeaway. Okay. Nick, what's your big takeaway?
Terrain, because I think that's going to be one of the biggest impacts on the game. I think the terrain rules.
I think
more blocking line of sight. I mean, they've said that. Well, they've hinted at close combat. Well, I think people have kind of speculated that close combat is going to be better in this edition. I don't know if there's any other rules changes that are going to be impactful in the close combat phase. Maybe stratagems and things like that. The core ones, like not being able to escape from combat. But I think terrain is probably going to be one of the biggest players in making combat more viable and better.
Yes.
So,
well, so 9th edition, the Age of Melee Infantry. I think one of the interesting things is they've talked about there's going to be bonuses versus hordes. And if there was anything that I thought wasn't an issue, it was hordes of people. The thing that I saw being an issue was vehicles, right? Toughness 8 was an issue. But who am I? Who am I to say? Hey, Datcom. So I'm just reading what everyone else in the chat thinks. My big takeaway, says Elmbirds, I didn't instantly go, well, that's stupid. Any changes? Agreed. Under Benz thinks it might be the Age of Melee Infantry. That's because he's obsessed with Bloodthirsters, though. Lojax, I just want to see these new missions that were designed with Brent Reese and Adepticon guys, says Lojax.
Basically, the playtesters.
Yeah, the American playtester team. 2 rules that do very similar jobs. 6 is always hit, and modifiers Captain -1/+1 are interesting. Okay. More ability to take what you want without having to take unwanted units to make detachments CB is Russ's big takeaway.
Yeah.
A different type of morale affecting that they were talking about Night Lords interacting differently than they do now, says Bright Flame, I think. A Reaper is interested in battle plans. Me too. And then, there we go. Okay. Right, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, that's everything. You get to
You ready
talk
for some
about some
AdMech?
AdMech now. Are you okay today? Everyone's worried about you.
No, I'm fine. I just got hay fever, so I'm just like flagging, but I'm all right. I'm all right. It's good. I've got lots of notes, so I'm ready to go. So I don't have to do any thinking. I just have to read what past Tom thought, and it'll be fine because I trust past Tom, and he definitely didn't write anything utterly stupid.
So
Tom has looked after future Tom.
Yeah.
So for context, this is information about AdMech, right? From the
Yeah.
new Engine War, from the community article.
So I'll post the link in chat so everyone can follow along at home. This is the link, and I've been going through these rules with a fine-tooth comb and working out what they could mean for your AdMech army. Obviously, this isn't completely comprehensive for your Engine War, but it is going through what we've currently got.
Well, can we?
I've got a
Do you
big
reckon we
list
could
of that.
start? I know you've got loads of stuff prepped.
No, fine. You go for it.
Well, do you reckon we could start out with where AdMech are at now? We had a look at this earlier today, didn't we?
Yeah. So you did a bit of research on that, Rob, right?
Yeah, I did. So I looked at. I went onto our bros over at 40kstats.com, and I looked at how the AdMech did, at least in ITC. Tom, you'd be able to give me more of an impression about ITC and WTC AdMech. But it seemed like they weren't doing particularly well. They normally were being souped into stuff, or they were having stuff souped into them. But the new tanks were popular. As were the new transports. They were all very popular. I didn't see as many of the Cataphrone
lists.
Yeah, I didn't see as many of the Cataphrone builds as I expected, and they definitely weren't doing well. But that was I only looked at the first 3 months of the year, and obviously we're a lot longer in. But they only appeared in the top fours in ITC twice. So
Yeah, so the first one was from Rumble in Romford, which was won by Konrad Barkowitz. So that's a UK event. And that came fourth, and it had one big squad of the Cataphrons, but it wasn't built around them. It had lots of the Scorpius transports, so it had 3 disintegrators and 4 Dune Riders, so that's the hover floaty tanks. And then it had some squads of Electro Priests. So what I'm guessing that list does is it just takes all the Scorpiuses, floods the center of the board of them, and tells you to deal with it. Similar with the second list, which came fourth in the Hammer of the New Year, which was won by former Captain America Andrew Gonio and his sisters, and that one again had lots of the floaty tanky boys. It had 9 this time with 3 Orange Doom Crawlers, no Cataphrons this time, and I feel like that's down to some of the heavier terrain in Worlds. So a couple of weeks ago we were talking about list archetypes of Worlds lists, right?
Yep.
And one of the things we were talking about is how Tau often went down first to beat up lists on the lighter boards. AdMech did a very similar thing. So you take the AdMech, you drop them down in the front spot, so they could pick a light board and just shoot everybody off if you had like a Cataphron heavy list. So they do kind of like those lighter boards, but I think they can operate on mediums as well if you play it properly. You need to try and run into the Sentinels in the first turn and then just jump out and just keep shooting things.
And again, for some clarity, sorry, Tom, just because probably something we should be conscious of over the next few weeks, we might have a whole bunch of people either migrating from Age of Sigmar or from other game systems, or people who are generally excited about new 40k.
Yeah.
And so some of the terminology. So yeah, AdMech does mean Mechanicum, like Adeptus Mechanicus. And then Nova Elves is a type of terrain board that you've seen a lot in 40k. Where it's 2 L shapes to create a line of sight. It's pretty synonymous. I won't have to explain anymore. Tom, please continue.
No, that's fine. I just noticed that we couldn't see my book on the screen because of my background, but that's okay. So I'm a big fan of the Cataphrons already because I think they're incredibly durable.
We talked about that when Vigilus came out.
Yeah. I do quite like these lists with all the Scorpiuses, but I feel like they could have some issues going down because the Doom Crawlers are only toughness 6, the Disintegrators toughness 7, so they can die quite quickly, but you can spam them because you can take them as dedicated transports and heavy support choices. So you can take 3 Disintegrators, heavy supports, and then spam the Dune Riders as dedicated transports to try and take as many of those as possible, which is why I quite like the melee Intercessor option that looks like it's going to be coming out compared to Reavers, because they are much, much more spammable. So a lot of what I'm going to be going through here is going to be talking about how this could apply to the current AdMech lists. And the first thing that we did have come up was there is now the option to create your own Forge world. So it's called Forge Your Own Path, and you can take a primary dogma and a secondary dogma and match them together to make your own Forge dogma that you can take on your units. And the one that we've displayed in this article, which I linked in the chat just a bit further up, you can scroll up and find that if you'd like, it's on the Warhammer community page, was called Radiant Disciples. And Radiant Disciples, I'm on the next one, is when resolving an attack with a ranged weapon against an infantry unit with this dogma that is not within 12 inches, subtract 1 from the strength characteristic of that weapon for that attack. So strength only matters insofar as it affects the wound roll. And effectively, it's -1 to wound for strength 4 or lower against like the chaff kind of infantry, things like your Skitarii Rangers and your other kind of toughness 3 weak infantry. But also, it's -1 to wound for strength 6 or lower if you're comboing this with Cataphoron, Breaches, and Destroyers because they're toughness 5. So if you want to be wounding them on better than 4s, you have to be firing at them with strength 7 or more weapons, right? So the question whenever I see a defensive trait like this is it better than Styges? Because you're going to have to trade out Styges for this.
And just so everyone at home
What's
doesn't
Styges again?
I'm just about to explain what Styges is, but that's okay. That's fine. So Styges is -1 to hit outside of 12 inches. So effectively, what's better, -1 to hit or -1 strength? So,
well, it depends, right?
Yeah,
so there are already inside the AdMech book some examples, and it's a great conversation because we talked about earlier the value of knowing in the future that there's only going to be a potential -1. So -1 for Styges is cool, which I used to stack obviously with my my battle chickens. Yeah.
Yes.
My dragoons.
Sindonian dragoons.
But because they are naturally -1 to hit from shooting as well. So now I've got the option of taking dragoons and having them -1 to be hit, and then -1 strength in stuff that tries to hit them, which is not bad.
Yeah. So what I like to do when I'm comparing them is I take the best case scenario for each one. So the best case scenario with the -1 strength is that it causes -1 to wound.
Yep.
So what's better, -1 to hit or -1 to wound?
-1 to hit is better.
Is -1 to wound is better than -1 to hit. And the reason for that is you have far more access to full rerolls to hit than you do to wound. So let's say you've got a negative modifier on the hit roll. Okay, I'm normally hitting on 3s, now I'm hitting on 4s. Well, now I've got a lot of these different characters, I can reroll those failed 3s, whereas I can never reroll that failed wound. So I've got a chance I can redeem it, whereas with the wounds I can't.
Yeah. No,
right?
100%.
But then you take it the other way, and it's only -1 strength, and so it won't always affect the dice roll. So the question is, if I'm likely to hit a lot of rerolls to hit flat, then I would probably go for the +1 strength. And the flip side of this is also that the Styges affect your vehicles, whereas this doesn't. It only affects your infantry. Yeah. So I feel like if you go down a vehicle route, you probably want to go Styges, just because even though you might hit the rerollable characters, it's far more consistently available than with the -1 strength, because the -1 strength might not always matter, and if you've got lots of vehicles, it won't matter to them ever. So you don't even want to do that.
Well, I think also the problem with talking about this particular one is the next one is great, right?
Well, I don't know. So actually, I'm still going on this one. I wasn't a fan of the next one. I've still got lots to talk about on this one.
Oh, okay.
So the example I used earlier was Cataphoron spam, where it really makes it very difficult to remove the Cataphrons if you are shooting at them with anything under strength 7. So
Can we talk about why it's difficult to get rid of them?
Well, I'm just about to do that again. So,
Sorry.
No, it's fine. So if you're strength 5, you're now becoming strength 4. You're now wounding on 5s rather than 4s. That's a big drop off. If you're strength 6, you're now becoming strength 5, so you're wounding on 4s rather than 3s. If you're strength 3, you're now becoming strength 2. You're wounding on 6s. So the only kind of points where it's not really affected are strength 4 weapons and strength 7 and above weapons, and strength 2 and lower, obviously. But most of the time, those kinds of weapons are poisoned anyway. So all those kinds of weapons, so strength 3, 5, and 6, the ones that are normally going to cause you issues are quite common. They are now being dropped down a bracket and going to cause you a few issues. I feel like, though, if you go Cataphrons, you don't go either Styges, nor do you go for this. You go for Mars. And the reason you go Mars is because you want Call, and you want Call for 2 reasons. The first one is because it gives you full rerolls to hit, which is fantastic for all the shots you're firing out of your Cataphrons. The second reason is that he gives you a plus or a -1 on your roll for your Mechanicals chart. So the Mechanicals chart is a special roll for Mechanicus. At the start of each turn, you get to roll a dice. And according to that dice, you get a certain effect. Or you can pick one, but you can only pick that one once per game. What Call does is he allows you to either modify the roll by a +1 or a -1. And that allows you to more consistently roll a 4 on that table. And what 4 does is it gives all your units the benefits of being in cover, even if they're not in cover. So now you're making your breaches, which are normally a 3+ armor save, a 2+, and destroyers, which are normally a 4+, a 3+. So Core gives you all those benefits if you're running Cataphrons, which I feel outweighs the potential -1 to wound or the -1 to hit.
Yep, I understand. I'd just like to argue that you made some really good arguments for taking Mars, but I'm only ever a Riser boy, and that's not just narrative
I don't
because
know
they're
what that does.
well,
To be honest.
Risers.
Strat.
Yeah, it's got the plasma strat. So again, one of the reasons Tom's talking a lot about Cataphrons specifically is because of Vigilus. They got a couple of stratagems that are available. One of them, which I think is very important, is Mechanicum have got a base up, 6+ invulnerable save on their units, but the Vigilus detachment allows you to pick a unit and give it a 5+ invulnerable save, which is actually pretty massive. On I think there's 3 wounds on a Cataphron. Might be 4, but I think it's 3. And you can take them in a big... Yeah, so you can take a big block of 12 with a 5+ invulnerable save, which is pretty amazing. But so that's the Invigilus, got nothing to do with Riser, but the Riser strat, allows you to add +1 damage and +1 to hit to plasma weapons.
+1 to wound, yeah.
+1 to wound, sorry, but +1 damage also.
I was ready for you.
But +1 damage as well, right?
Yeah, it is +1 damage.
And then there's another generic strat as well, whereas if you take some Castellans, you're able to add, I think it's 2 CP for that one. You're able to pick another unit, and the Castellans and the other unit get +1 to hit. So you could basically effectively make your Cataphrons hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. In Riser, but also because you're going to overcharge them, and now you're doing 3 damage per 1, which is pretty baller. But that's my version. My version is way more guts, no glory. But as an orc player, that's obviously a dumb way to do it, but it's a great way of doing it. Yeah. 12d6 damage 3 plasma shots is wicked fun. Nick, I know you're excited by that as our plasma specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can confirm that lots of plasma is very erotic to play.
Yeah, and Pokey John's right. There's also the +1 to hit from Vigilus. So you actually get +2 to hit, which means you aren't actually failing you can't actually fail your plasma shot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can't blow yourself up.
Yes.
And it also isn't there's a stratagem where you can turn a servitor into a Cataphron destroyer as well, I believe. So even if you do lose a few, you can build some more mid-game.
I think so, but I can't remember that one. But yeah, that's right. But yeah, that's why Tom's talking about it, because there's a really viable build inside having those really strong units, right? I think anyway. So
specifically with the Cataphrons, you can build a big brick of Cataphrons, so you just take as many as you can, and then you stick them around Core, so you all reroll to hit, and then you stick them around a Manipulus, so you can get extra range, and that is one of the characters from the Kill Team box, whose rules you can only find there. That then allows you to.
Tell me about this. Tell me about this journey. I love this journey.
So I was looking for the Scorpius rules, the Scorpius, Dream Riders, and Disintegrator rules, because when I first read this, I did a classic Tom, and I read the words I wanted to read and missed out the vehicles bit. And I was like, I wonder how Radiant Disciples would work on Scorpiuses. So I messaged in the Welsh chat, and no one had any idea. So I messaged on Twitter, and Alandrell popped up and said they're only in the box, and I'm like, oh great. So in order for me to find the rules for this, I need to buy a kit and...
Well, you could use their army builder. Use their army builder.
I could do that. Alternatively, I could psychically present myself into the Games Workshop factory, slide into one of their boxes and just read it.
Yeah, well... Dudade, I know for a fact Dudade loved that little game on Twitter where you were playing Games Workshop Go, where you were like, where... I mean, it's pretty unique. The rules for that are only available in... So let me get this right. The rules for that are only available in the boxes, but the rules for the Kill Team guy, which is no longer available to buy, the Manipulus... is no longer available to buy, and the rules were only inside. I don't think so. They've said that they're re-releasing him separately.
Does he have points though?
Yeah.
We used him at the ETC because when I was talking about the Mars stuff, I specifically went and I spoke to Eric Hoger, who was the Team Wales AdMech player for last year, and he taught me through the exact combo he was using with his Admech, which is like, here are my characters, and here are the cataphrons. I'm like, all right, that's fine, Eric. Yeah, and he's like, okay, well, where can I find the rules of this? It's like, oh, it's in this obscure box somewhere. Oh, great, thanks, Eric. I'm glad. So yeah, he taught me through that build and why it works. So yeah, or I could just do what Winner Stays On just suggested, which is definitely did not happen. Never did that.
Right.
So the second example was the Omnissiah Shield, and I know you were talking a bit earlier about how you think this is really good. I think there are better things you could use, but I think there's still some uses for it. Mm-hmm. So this is a secondary dogma, so I don't expect it to be as strong as the primary dogmas are in general. Mm. And what this does is it causes any enemy unit that is hitting against your infantry in melee to reduce the armor penetration characteristic of that weapon by 1 for that attack. So in terms of killing your chaff units, like your Skitarii Rangers and what have you, your kind of screening units, I don't think it's a massive deal. And the reason for that is any unit that's going to have an AP value will kill you regardless of that AP value, because you're a 4+ save model with 1 wound at toughness 3, right? You're not the most durable unit in the world.
Yeah, even if it doesn't have an AP, again, you're not the most durable unit. 4+ save.
Yeah, exactly.
At best.
So when I started going through this, my mind naturally gravitated towards my favorite unit in the Codex, which are the Cataphrons. And the Cataphrons are quite difficult to charge anyway, because they have access to Cognus Flamers, specifically the Destroyers. So the way you'll layer out your castle is you'll have your breaches behind with your Plasma Culverins, and then you'll have your heavy arc rifles, and then you'll have your Destroyers out the front with the Cognus Flamers. And the reason why this is tricky is because we were talking about the Tech Priest Manipulus earlier from the Kill Team box. And what the Manipulus can do is increase your range by 3 inches on all your weapons, which can make your Cognus Flamers 11-inch range.
Does that affect anything?
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
What?
So it makes them very difficult to charge them.
That's fucking gangster. Apologies for swearing. But yeah, that's great.
That's new.
Because mainly,
that's fine.
I don't know. Today I'm just feeling, I'm feeling that. Personally, I like the idea of banging that on my plasma guns, Tom.
Yeah,
because
there you go.
I feel Admech is a all eggs in one basket sort of build. Like, I just want 12 guys that are going to just blitz their way through the earth. Yeah?
We're just going to need an emote with an orc boy with a plasma gun or something like that. That's all we're going to talk about. It's
just in his eyes.
Yeah,
Plasma
it's
and orc
what we
boys.
like to do.
Also, have you read The Beast of Rises?
There you go. Is that an orc with a plasma gun?
Doesn't this do +1 damage, or am I wrong on that? This secondary.
The secondary?
Yeah, the secondary did I read that wrong?
I think you might have read a different one, mate, because it's not this one.
Well, then I am going out of my mind.
To be fair, mate, that might explain where you thought it was good, because
yeah, I might have done a Rob. I might have done a classic war game and just read whatever the fuck I wanted. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So after these, but for these 2 things, if you want to build your own Forge World, right?
Yeah. So all I could do is we've got 1 primary one and 1 secondary one, so you could take 1 of each of those. And the only thing I could do with these is say, well, if I took Radiant Disciples, which is the first one we talked about, and we took Omnissiah's Shield as the second one, and we put them together to make a Forge World, is that better than Mars? The answer is you're probably more durable and really and more reliably durable, because you're not trying to roll up cover on your Canticles chart. But do you need more durability, or is it better to get the potential durability from Call, but take the reroll to hit for the extra damage as well? And I think that the latter is better, personally. Mm-hmm. But obviously we haven't seen all the primary dogmas, and we haven't seen all the secondary dogmas, so we need to see.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sorry, it's the one I read was the Mars one, which is obviously great.
That's further down, but we are going to talk about it. And I did like that one. Yeah.
I apologise. So that's that section done, right? Sorry, carry on. You carry on with where you're at.
No, it's fine. It's just Neil's saying he creamed me, and I've not spoken to Neil in like 2 weeks, so that's really confused. But whatever. That's okay. So the second section is called
the worst thing we've ever done is let Tom have the chat in front of him at the same time. Also, Tom, health and safety-wise, I feel like we're going to have you stop putting a knife into your mouth. For the podcast listeners, it is one that is...
a mask?
Yeah, a mask is better. Yeah. You look like you're about to go on the purge. But yeah, so what's next?
You're merely adopted for 40k. I was born in it.
I've always rolled 6s. Oh,
So the
go on,
second
Nick.
section is called Canticles, and the specific wording on this is, if you'd prefer to stick with one of the Forge Worlds from Codex Adeptus Mechanicus rather than create your own, you'll be rewarded with a new Canticle. Servants of Mars can now improve their heavy weaponry. So when I read this, it makes it look like it's just a generic rule that you're given, whereas the Canticles of the Omnissiah rule is you roll on the traits on the tree,
Yeah.
and you get a Canticle. I think what this is going to be, although it's not very clear, is when you come to the start of your turn, if you are Mars, you can either roll on the tree, or you can take panegyric procession, whatever this is called.
Well, do you want me to have a go at the name?
Yeah, do it.
No problem at all.
Oh, are you ready, Rob?
Panegyric procession.
That was awful. That's okay. Oh, dear.
So what does this do?
So what this does, that's a very good question, is models in affected units do not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. Increase the strength characteristic of heavy weapon models in the affected unit are equipped with by 1. So, I had a bit of a look through the book for this one.
This one's great.
Well, the first thing I wrote was another reason to take Mars for a Cataphron brick, which is true, but they don't suffer penalties for moving and firing heavy weapons anyway, because Cataphrons have a rule that prevents them suffering that. Mm-hmm. So, but you will get the +1 strength to heavy though. So you get +1 strength on your arc rifles, so they'll become strength 7, and your heavy grav cannon on your destroyers will become strength 6. So now the heavy arc rifles are winning everything other than heavy vehicles at least 3s, with toughness 7 vehicles dropping to 4s, and the destroyers are now wounding gravis models and bikes on 3s with lighter vehicles on 4s. So that's what you'd effectively get from that. It's not like massive, but it is good. It's definitely really good.
And that's only really is that only really once per game, because it's a canticle, isn't it?
Well, so this is weird. I'm not entirely sure how they intend for it to be used, because
I think
it doesn't
it's going
look
to
like
be.
it fits on the tree.
I think it's going to be an additional sub-faction rule, Nick. Basically, a free extra thing for being Mars.
It could be that. It could be Canticles 1 use only, or it could be, if you don't want to roll on the tree, take this. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to fit it. So,
go on.
No, it's okay. That's fine. So I went through the book and I had a look at other things that could potentially use this, because I'm very conscious that I'm pigeonholing myself a lot into Cataphrons, because I do like Cataphrons. So what I looked at was, I had a look at some of the vehicles, and it's not a massive deal for them. The Scorpiuses, in particular the Disintegrator and what have you, they're already ignoring moving and firing anyway, so the two more common shooter units, NADMAC, already ignore it, so you don't really need it. But it may be something that can tip the Dune Crawler into more common use. I don't think it'll make it like a top tier unit that you can put in like top tier lists, but it's something that makes it a little bit better, because now you can like walk around on your crab leg shooting your big, I don't know what to call it, that's not TOS gun that's mounted on the top of it. Out things, I guess, right?
Well, so I also think it doesn't affect Neil. Big up Neil in the chat says it affects Castellans, but Castellans effectively don't ever move. Because they're either in protector protocol so that they're tanky as fuck, or they stand still so they get to fire twice.
Well, I actually came to Castellans because I quite liked it on Castellans.
All right.
So I actually wrote the words, synergizes well with Castellans. And I said, you may not want to be moving them, so you can use protector protocol to double your shots, but you can still make your heavy Foster Blasters strength 7. And when you're having to move, because obviously you need to get into the center of the board to make maximum value of that 36-inch range you have, you can ignore the modifier for moving and firing the heavies, which is massive because you're only ballistic skill 4. Having to move and then firing a ballistic skill 5 basically makes them incredibly kind of when you're spending that many points for them, right? So it gives you some kind of actual punch when you're having to move.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I understand. So if you've got to move them, there's a bonus for moving them instead of standing them still. Personally, I think they're obnoxiously awful looking. So they could just stand where the fuck they stand and just do project power 36 inches, and that's your lot because you brought ugly models to the game. That's my.
Oh, maybe. I don't know why you wouldn't want to see 9 versions of Big Hero 6 just stood in the middle of the battlefield.
I've seen some really nicely painted ones. I think some of it comes down to the paint scheme.
All right.
Yeah, and the head swaps, and then also the rest of them swaps.
And then the arm swaps, and a good leg swap as well.
Yeah.
So we were very lucky here, and I actually showed. In fact, do you want to say anything else on that one before we move on to the next one?
No, is there a stratagem that lets them fire twice? Oh, because you can
There
obviously,
is, yeah.
because you can
So
flip
Neil
it back.
was the progenitor of the I'm going to fire 700 shots of my Castellans in a turn. He was that guy.
Oh, so Neil, you've got loads of those ugly-looking robots. Screw you, Neil.
That was his fault. So the second one is Styges, and it's called Plea of the Veiled Hunter. That's a lot easier to say. And what this allows you to do is affected units can shoot in a turn in which they fell back, but if a unit does so when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model in that unit that turn, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So you can fall back and shoot, but you do it at -1 effectively. And what I thought about with this one is which units from the AdMech book could ever be in a situation where they'd want to fall back and shoot?
Robots.
Robots. Can I just do
There you
something?
go.
You destroyers.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger!
I don't even know what that said. I didn't even come over Skype very well.
Did,
but that's
did
okay.
it come out? Did it come out right?
I don't know. Don't know
missed the
what
start of
right's
it.
meant to be, mate.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger! Did that work?
You sound like Star Wars Battlefront 2 voiceovers.
Hold on. What about this one? One more try.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger!
You sound like yourself just with autotune on.
Oh,
Too much emotion in that one, I think. First
Yeah,
off,
Nick oscillates a bit on the tone.
Thanks. Sorry. Please
So,
continue.
So firstly, with the qualifiers for this one is firstly the unit has to be able to live through the charge, and secondly the unit has to be a unit you want to ever shoot. So it doesn't really matter if it's a screen or not, because if it's a unit that you're going to screen out or not, because shit can sometimes happen. Like maybe someone just bounces a tiny character in and tags something, and you're like, oh well, I'm screwed now. But just having that in your back pocket can be nice. What I was thinking of again here were cataphrons again, because of course I was. Because often the cataphrons are screening themselves, so even if you charge in through the Cognos Slamers that fire 11-inch range, you tag the cataphrons, and the cataphrons just jump out with a -1 to hit because they're Styges, and then they just shoot you in the face.
Yeah.
are we
that's
looking
a
at
good one.
Codex Cataphron then?
We are looking at Codex Cataphrons.
No! Oh, what about the rest of the book? Can I not at least get a couple of transonic arquebuses in so I get to say it a lot?
I don't even know what a transonic arquebus
So
is.
they're the 60-inch sniper rifles that AdMech get along with the
your
Skitarii.
crappy squads.
They're great. They're great. Honestly, because
Die for one every
they
game.
started out at 25 points, then they went to 50 points, and then they've come down now.
Points.
Yeah, they were 50 points each at one point. It's a 60-inch shot that's I think strength 8 -2 D3 damage, Tom. So it's not nothing.
And it's a sniper.
And it's a
It also never
sniper.
gets to fire because it's all dead.
Well, no, because you can literally backboard those units, so you can take a ton of them. It's really fun. But
I played
it's,
against someone at Blood and Glory, and he had knights, a Loyal 32, and then also some AdMech dudes. And he had loads of small squads with the
So a
snipers.
crappier version of my London GT list.
I guess so, yeah. But like all those snipers were quite a threat. There wasn't many places for me to hide, so I had my Thunderfire cannons, and he was just targeting the Tech Marines. And you get a couple of D3 wounds through on those Tech Marines, going to kill him, and that's just invalidated my entire Thunderfire cannon.
Yeah, they're really good. They're really, really good. They're great little tools, and I love that they've come down in price, like over the chapter approves. Anyway, never mind. They're a fun, especially because you're taking a squad and you can just slap 2 in a unit really easy, or just one, whatever. Anyway, sorry, Tom. Carry on.
No, you're fine, you're fine. So the next thing we're going to go on to are the Holy Order Warlord traits. So your Warlord can now join an order, you see. So what that means is that order then lets your Warlord take a Warlord trait. And that Warlord trait then lets you select an ability from a list at the start of each turn. So you need more bookkeeping, hooray, to keep up with your canticles and your list and all that nonsense. So I had a look through most of the AdMech Warlord traits. They're generally not great. I'm not sure about the Vigilus ones because I don't have access to the book, but it looked like it wouldn't be a massive trade-off to take one of these, right? Rob, am I right on that one?
No, so the Warlord traits here I think are particularly good, or these abilities anyway, and so no, like it depends again how you
So are
build
the
it.
current AdMech ones good or not? Sorry, is what I'm asking.
No,
The ones in the codex.
no, but call is.
There you go.
Yeah, but no.
So, yeah, there we go. Cool. So there were 3 options in the one that they listed. So this one was called Divinations of Mars, was the Warlord trait you could take here. And there are 3 different things you can do with this. The first one is called Overloaded Safeguards, and it effectively means that any unmodified hit rolls of 6 within 6 inches generate an additional hit.
Amazing.
So you can whop that on one of your buff characters behind all of your cataphrons, and then combo that with full rerolls from Call for full effect. Which I quite liked.
Or +2 to hit, but probably +1 now in the future.
Yeah,
D6 shots, 12
It's
D6 plasma
unmodified,
corvettes.
though. It is unmodified.
Yeah, it is unmodified, but
yeah.
it's still like a shit ton of shots, right?
Oh yeah, sure, 100%. Yeah, and it's even more when you get to reroll those. So
Aren't the robots better value for that then?
I mean, you don't get.
Well, they all get a shit ton of shots.
Way more shots.
I think.
I'm
I
not
think
sure you
your
do
point.
though.
I think your point is, Nick, is that what you're really looking to stick that on is obviously something with a ton of output. I mean, that's also not. So let's talk about the worst unit in all of the game, Rust Stalkers. That's right, with their Fletcher shots, which have got 5 shots each. We've also seen the flying version now with the 5 shots. Did you read up on there's a flying version now, basically? No, not planes. No, the guys with wings. I can't remember
The
what
winged fellows.
The winged fellows, but they got 5 shots each. Pow, 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 pow. So.
But
they
Taraxi, yeah.
Yeah, but why would you take those? Why wouldn't you take, like you say, what is it, 36 shots that you can potentially get out of the Castellans when they're firing twice, or 12d6 shots coming out of. But then it doesn't affect just one unit, right? It affects any
it's
model.
all units within 6.
That's
Which is why it's
incredible.
not just putting on, Castellans. You just stick it in the middle of a bunch of your Codex Cataphrons.
It's models within 6.
Yeah, models. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's gonna.
Which
yeah,
you can still make it work.
So you're gonna have to cram. You're gonna have to cram people into like a little.
You'll be fine. You can make it work. It's not an issue.
But
sure
it is friendly Forge World models as well, so you might get a bit of an Iron Hands sort of like situation
If you use
here.
the word Forge World models, I think I'm gonna.
Yeah, but
it.
but you know those tanks, the Scorpiuses, with getting some extra 6s to hit is nice as well. I mean, you could either go weighter shots, or you could just go, do you know what? I want the quality shots that I'm already going to put in my list anyway, and I want to try and generate some extra hits from them. So it's one or t'other, isn't it?
No, totally. That totally makes sense. So the second one that you can use, I thought you might like this one, Rob, because it's just weird. And it involves Dragoons. So it's called Aggressive Subroutines, and it allows you to reroll charge rolls within 6 inches. So this is for units, so you can chain back and get this if you wanted to. And I thought what you can do is, what I specifically wrote was, can be funny with Sindonian Dragoons. The issue you'd have is keeping up with them. But they've got quite long bases, so you can chain coherency back to your Warlord. So you're going to run 18 of these with Styges, 18 Sindonian Dragoons. You're then going to use Clandestine Infiltration 4 times to get those 18 and have them run 9 inches up the board before the game starts, and have your Warlord run 9 inches up the board before the game starts, and then charge your opponent with 18 of these in turn 1 with reroll charges.
No, I do like that.
I think that only falls foul of someone who has like some scouts or something, or some infiltrators to block it off.
And is an idiot.
I never said it was good.
But you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Listen, and as someone who owns 12 Dragoons, I like the idea to try, but it's a terrible. It's a terrible army, but it looks great. So that's all that we should care about.
I'm encourage the chat to run that army.
What? Loads of Dragoons? It's pretty awesome. Because honestly, that 1 CP can turn a unit of Dragoons into like melters, not melters, and also not great, not actual melters, and they can't really deal with armor. And there's a whole bunch of problems, but don't worry about that. Just
it'll be funny watching your opponent see 18 chickens running them. And speaking of things that kind of suck. Predatory programming is the third option, and this is when a friendly Forge World unit within 6 inches of this Warlord advances,
Speaking of chickens,
roll 1 additional 2d6 discord
nice.
and discard 1 of the dice when making the advance roll. So basically you roll 2d6 when advancing and you pick the highest. I don't know how this works with Cataphrons again, because they can only advance d3 inches, but it tells you to roll a d6, and I'm very confused. So, cool. Anyway. Yeah, it's not that great because you're not advancing very often. Moving swiftly on. Stratagems. There's a lot in here. So the first one...
They're revealing quite a lot in this.
Yeah.
I think it's just a massive book, Nick. I think there's
Oh, is it?
loads of stuff in there, yeah.
It's not like
I mean,
Chaos
you have to
Eater.
remember that the Adeptus Mechanicus book was the third, maybe even fourth book that came out, and it's had no update since. So
Yes,
it's
they needed a lot of love.
a lot of love, yeah.
Cool. There we go. So the next bit we're going to go into is stratagems. And when I first read this stratagem, I thought that's really good. And then the more I read it, I thought it's okay. So it's called electrofilament countermeasures. And so you use this stratagem for 1 CP at the end of your movement phase and select one Archaeopter equipped with a command uplink from your army. And until the start of your next turn, enemy models or abilities have no effect whilst they're within 6 inches of that unit. So I thought, hey, you can just throw it up there, turn off all the auras, fantastic. Well, it's only while they're within 6 inches of the unit. So if you are providing a buff, you can obviously walk off and then provide that buff, or you can kill it and still provide the buff.
Yes!
The thing
Finally
is,
a way to
though,
deal with Azrael. Yes!
This is the thing. So
Finally!
if you're providing a defensive buff, this is something you need to watch out for, because you won't have an opportunity to move between the end of the AdMech movement phase and the start of the AdMech shooting phase at all, will you? So it's a case of you need to be making sure you're screening out 6 inches so that this thing cannot get within 6 inches of your buff characters. Because if it can, and it can turn off all those defensive buffs, then it's going to cause you some mad issues when all that shooting comes your way as well.
Yeah.
I feel like generally with buff characters, you're going to have them behind your lines anyway. So, and if you're playing against planes, you kind of want to protect yourself against them flying in behind and shooting your characters anyway.
Right, but there is a slight difference. So normally what you can do is, if you're doing that, you just stick like a squad of chaff behind your character and you go, oh, well, you've got to shoot them, so you can't shoot my character near. Whereas with this one, it's a case of, well, now I can't even let you come within 6 inches. It's not even that I can let you close so long as there's something in between me and you. It's I can't let you come anywhere near me. Because if you do, you're going to turn off some pretty important debuffs here, or buffs to my army that's going to cause you issues in removing me.
But is it only good against buffs that are relevant in the AdMech player's turn?
I think so, yeah. Because otherwise it's very easy to move out of the way. It's only a 6 inch range. You can normally move 5 in advance, yeah, and you have to be outside of 1 inch anyway, so you can just move out of the way of that. Although you can use it to push your opponent around the board a bit and make them move left, right, centre, whatever, just out of the way.
I'm just wild speculation here because obviously we've not seen all the stratagems. Although I was just going to say there could be something that might boost the range of that, like a stratagem, but then a stratagem on a
There
strat
isn't. No,
would
I
be
don't think so.
weird.
Yeah, stratagemception.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Okay.
Stratception.
So just to quickly define what an aerocopter is, there are 3 variants. There's one called a transvector, which is a transport.
Yes.
There's one called a fusillade, which is a bomber.
Even more
and there's
yes.
one called a stratoraptor, which is a gunship.
Zero want.
Okay.
I don't want the gunship.
Brilliant.
I just want to carry naked electro priests or bomb people. Either of those two.
Ooh, do you reckon I hope it has a rule similar to the Valkyrie for Imperial Guard, where it can fly and
Immediately
drop
drop
people
them.
off?
Oh!
Yeah, that'd be amazing for Electro Priest, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just launch them straight into the enemy armies.
Yeah.
Straight in. There you go. So the second stratagem is called Steel Rain Fusillade. And earlier we were talking about suppression, weren't we, Rob?
Uh-huh.
And this specifically refers to the Taraxi Skystalkers. So you use the stratagem in your shooting phase when shooting the Taraxi Skystalkers. That's never going to roll off the tongue. And select one enemy unit that is not Titanic. And until the end of the phase, when resolving an attack made by a model in that Taraxi Skystalkers unit against the selected unit, if a hit is scored, the target is suppressed until the start of your next turn. So it's very rare that you won't hit with the Skystalkers because you have access to a weapon called a Flechette Carbine, which is an Assault 5 Strength 3 weapon. The strength doesn't matter. What matters is you've got a lot of shots, so you've got a lot of chances to hit with the weapon. And that causes suppression, which means that unit is -1 to hit until the start of your next turn. 1 CP.
And I think that's good. Or not.
Cool. I mean, it's not bad. It's fine. Like, it specifically works. So I actually did a little bit of working out what it's really good at. So it's pretty good at if you're against something that doesn't have access to the flat rerolls I was talking about earlier, which is things like Calgar provides and Drago provides and Gulliman provides and things and Abaddon provides and things like that. And it's specifically good if your opponent is running a big bully unit like Paladins, Andrigo's reroll wording is really old, so it doesn't take into account the modifier. But Paladins do have a way to get around it, but you still make them burn CP. And the reason for that is if you've got one unit that does most of the shooting damage, which Grey Knights Paladins really actually don't do, but they can do if you stack all the buffs on them. If you are sticking the debuff on them, you're getting far more value than if you're sticking it on something that's not shooting as much, right? So if you're against those kinds of units, that could be much more useful. But it's also not going to be as useful when the negative hit modifiers don't stack, because you lose value in hit modifiers, because so long as you can get one off and you don't need all the others.
Okay, I can't say I disagree. I'm not going to lie to you. But I also think one of the things about this Steel Ray... This is a Steel Ray Fusillade we're talking about, right?
Yes, this is it.
Yeah, I just think that you're going to have a really light infantry unit affecting very close quarters a unit, and they're going to just... It's a one-shot job that you're going to get this off. I think having an Arco, whatever, the plane, and being able to do the electrofilament the electrofilament countermeasures, I'm into that. Okay. That works for me. Hey, Dan Unsupervised. But the Steel Rain Fusillade, I feel like its utility is really weak, because you're going to fly something over, do something once, and then that unit's going to be blipped out the sky. Maybe I'm wrong. And also, aren't you shooting the unit that you're affecting?
Yeah.
Well, then,
but still, you've only got strength-3 weapons. Or, alternatively, what it could do is you fire one gun at this unit that you want to cause -1 to hit to, and then all your other guns go at something else. Because you've got 5 shots, you've got a relatively good chance of hitting.
Do we know what the max unit size is for that unit? Is it 5?
We don't know. We don't know on the Skystalkers yet. They haven't announced that or spoke about it at all.
Hey, Done and Supervised. If you have just joined us, if you are anyone that's just joined us and you'd like to start the VOD all over again, obviously you can watch on YouTube or listen to the podcast. And we're talking up to now. We've already talked about some of the stuff, ninth stuff that we've seen, and we're just halfway through some of the new AdMech rules, which are pretty prodigious. There's a lot of information in there, which is quite cool. Because they do, Nick, it's like a mini codex, really. They've got a plane that builds as 3 different kits. They've got a flying unit, an infantry flying unit that builds as 2 different kits. We're also seeing the cavalry. So like it's almost like a release, like it's a codex level release worthy sort of level of stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But sorry,
it's as many units as the Custodes Codex had.
And the Demon's Codex.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Gene Stealer Cults, like the second set of Gene Stealer Cult stuff, right? Yeah, they got like a second wave of things. Okay, all right. Then let's get to the stuff that is
we've
effectively...
got 4 more things to go.
Yeah.
So we've got the Cerberus Cavalry. So we were talking about these earlier. There's 2 different types of Cerberus Cavalry. There's the Cerberus Sulphur Hounds, which are my favourite. And they've got a rule called Pistoliers, which we already knew about, but I'm going to go through it anyway because they list it in here, and therefore it's just worth talking about it because it's here. So if you're following along, you can always just click through it. So this allows you to fire pistol weapons even if the models in this unit have advanced this turn. And that's quite nice because the pistol weapons they have are called Sulphur Breath, and it's a flamer with AP -1 that ignores cover. So as your cavalry, you could probably be expecting to move about 10 inches. You can then advance potentially 6 inches for 16. And then you've got a threat range of 8 inch with a flamer. So you can effectively take this flamer, 24-inch threat range, with strength 4, AP -1, ignores cover, which means it's effectively AP -2 if you're shooting at something in cover, because you're denying the cover save bonus, and you're adding a -1 AP on top of it.
Do they have 1 pistol each, or they got 2?
So I'm talking about the Sulphur Hands.
Okay.
They haven't talked about the actual pistols that are in their hands, but the flamey head-looking things. So if you look at the models here, they've got flamers as their heads for their horses.
Like a muzzle is a flamer.
Yeah, that's the one. They count as pistols. So that is gonna, have some impacts when you can move and fire those. Because when I honestly
think that they're going to try super hard to sell the dogs to us, and they're going to suck. There's nothing about them. They're not going to be.
Which dogs, sorry?
The mounts that they're riding, the Sulphur Hounds, because they're dogs. They're not riding horses. They're riding giant dogs, aren't they? I think that's the point.
Possibly, I can't really tell.
But I think no matter what, they're going to suck. I can't see them being useful. I guess. Yeah. But anyway, sorry, Tom, you carry on.
No, that's fine. That's all good. So the second unit are the Cerberus Raiders, and they look like if you look at the the prequels for Star Wars,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
and Google Tusken Raiders.
They do look like Tusken Raiders.
Tusken Raiders. Come on, chat. I'm going to help you out with this one.
Yeah, but you can clearly see in the picture that they're marching in two are behind each other, then one's at the side.
They're Tusken Raiders
Whereas
with the
Tusken
Jawa
Raiders
hoods.
only go in single file.
Yeah, but it's true. I don't know. They're Tusken Raiders with Jawa hoods, okay? It's fine. Anyway, that's what these are. They're Cerberus Raiders, but I'm going to call them Tuskens. So the Tuskens have something called the Eye of Cerberus.
Yep.
And which means that this unit can target characters even if they're not the closest unit, and 6 to wound cause a mortal wound in addition. So basically, they're snipers on dogs.
Which is like, I mean, they're competing against that transonic arquebus, which is the 60-inch range. But depending on, obviously, with line of sight blocking terrain, it's much harder. So you might be able to get a movable character sniper that's probably going to be toughness 4 at best with a 4-up save. So you'll blip it. Yeah. So you'll blip it off the board like it doesn't exist. So
but also,
I just can't see it being useful.
Here.
Yeah.
Has anyone tried to fire a musket off a horse?
No, but Genghis Khan made a real good career out of firing arrows off a horse.
He did. But has anyone tried to fire a musket off a horse?
What are you talking? Are you talking about electronic future musket, or are you talking old school black powder musket? What are you talking?
Let's put it this way. I have a feeling like these muskets may be heavy weapons.
I actually tried it today because I was a bit concerned about my eyesight. So I thought I'd ride a horse. I'd ride a horse and shoot someone with a musket. But
near a castle.
Well, yeah. Where else do you think I got the musket from?
Well, if you hit him, your eyesight must be fine, I guess.
Yeah, it's fine. I got that guard pretty good, so.
Well, congratulations, Nick. That's fantastic. Yeah, I honestly, I really love these models, but I can't see them being good in any way. But yeah, that's good. Member says, I mean, these lads will be enhanced lads. I bet they will still have Ballistic Steel 3 as they look like Rangers. So that's true. That's the other thing about AdMech that I'm sure most people know. We talk about Cataphrons, Tom, as we have a lot. Is their BS4? Their BS4.
Yeah, they are, which is why I like Call to get rerolls, Beth.
Yeah, as is the Castellans, and I think we see that that level of shottage come because of the BS4, where the whole army is normally BS3, the regular Skitarii. So anyway, so then there's the Eye of Cerberus, and then there's the Archicopters, the shittest rules ever.
The cavalry. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I am very confused with their writing on this because it makes it sound like they get both of these for free, but equally it says if earlier up, so I'm not sure if you have to pay for them or not. I'm very confused. Anyway, the first rule that it says that they can have is called Command Uplink, and that is, if this model has a command uplink, friendly Forge World units can use this model's leadership instead of their own whilst within 6 inches of the model. And according to the community team, as we've seen above, this can be paired with electrofilament countermeasures to ruin your opponent's plans. Those are the electro countermeasures that are park yourself 6 inches away from your enemy and deny their buffs.
And then give yourself +1 bravery.
Yes, also within 6 inches. So I think the exact quote I used was, I don't know if they know that enemy models and friendly models are different things. Anyway, that's enough bullying. Carrying on. How do you feel about +1 leadership, guys?
Well, okay. So so there's an argument to be made now is that we don't actually understand how that's going to work. If it works, if that +1 leadership is it going to work like we've seen, it works in Kill Team or maybe even Lord of the Rings, it actually could be a really big deal. Like imagine that, like where we used to laugh at +1 leadership units or abilities. And now we're like, oh, wow, that could really change the shape of my game. You know, if units pin or don't pin. So I actually, I reserve judgment because it sounds like they're making a very big change to core leadership mechanics. So until I know what that is, so that's either as useless as it's ever been, or it's super important. But again, really important point to note that I saw someone make. Someone made a really great point on the internet today. So well done that guy, because it's probably
someone made a good point on the internet.
It's probably the only good point made on the internet.
Credit to that guy.
Yeah, credit to that guy. He said it's a bit weird that, and it makes sense. AdMech worship vehicles and machines, so they're like, I get +1 bravery because I'm near a machine, but also machines blow up in this world, so you don't normally want to put your blowing up machines next to your doesn't want to take small bits of damage and take leadership checks units, so there's a bit of counterplay there.
They might see that as like the greatest honor to die by.
They do, but as a
explosion
player,
by a machine.
oh no! Listen, you're playing
The
Crusade
kills
right
by
now,
a blowing
Nick.
up toaster.
You're crushing it. You're like so narrative, and you're in the story, and I'm loving it. But tactically, not the soundest option, maybe. Like,
Brilliant.
yeah.
I'm really eager to get into this next one, by the way, because it's my favourite rule in the entire
Please
article.
tell us.
And it's called, not just because it's called the Chaff Launcher, which is a fantastic name, but it is effectively a Wave Serpent shield. Apart from the fact that you can't pop it to do the mortal wounds.
Okay.
You can give your planes Serpent shields.
Which is not bad at all.
And what I mean by that is, for people who aren't Wave Serpent aficionados such as myself, is that when you take damage from a weapon, every time you take that damage, you reduce the amount of damage you take by 1 to a minimum of 1.
Yeah,
And you can have 9 of those boys flying around.
Yeah, it's a pretty obnoxious rule.
Oh, it's lovely. And you've also got hard to hit because you're a plane.
Yeah, I suppose Wave Serpents aren't that bad anymore because of the negative nerf. Only being a -1.
They're still kind of annoying though because of the shield.
Yeah.
Okay.
fact,
Well,
seven.
Tom, that's excellent. That's excellent research.
It took us a while, that one, didn't it?
No, but I really like it. And while we did that, I'd like you all to know whether or not it's this Thursday or next Thursday. Joining us for the AdMech book review will be Rickard, if you know Rickard, who is potentially one of the best AdMech players in the world. So he's going to come and talk to us about
Cool.
Mechanicum on that show as
Nice.
well. So I'm looking forward to that because Tom, you seem invested, I'm invested, and Nick is a Necron player.
Yeah, so I hate any other robots.
Didn't you have a box set against Necrons?
Shouldn't the AdMech worship Necrons if they worship,
I
machinery?
mean, isn't the
technology?
Void Dragon under their planet?
Yeah,
And
So
it's
they're
been
They're
confirmed.
basically their Necrons.
Nick, have you seen the naming of the what the Catan shard is Shard of the Void Dragon? So they've like coalesced that information now. So that's fact.
I
Following
mean, it's in the
fiction.
Horus Heresy series.
Yeah, it is, but there was only there was like
There
Void
was only
Dragons.
like 4 chapters of it.
Yeah, but now it's like, oh shit, the Void Dragon. Honestly, it sounds rad. It sounds like the AdMech are getting a really big boost, which I think that they need, because I think that there's whole elements. But I think we're still in that environment where we don't know the future of like Toughness 3 troop units, which I always said that didn't have the best time in 40k anyway. Those little 10-man squad troop units, if they could be.
Yeah, but you might not have to take them because you don't need to necessarily fill out battalion anymore. You could just like, well, I suppose you're taking Catron destroyers anyway, aren't you? If you're playing AdMech, are you bothering with those guys?
I mean, unless you're taking 6 Scorpius Dune Riders and then filling them with plasma dudes, then yeah.
Or even Electropolice. Some people have been ramming Electropolice in their transports, which has been cool.
I'm going to link the stats for those 2 events that you mentioned earlier, Rob, in the chat so people can have a look at the lists that finished top 4 there.
There you go. And I'll include those in the show notes as well.
Boom.
Well, Tom,
Perfect.
thank you for doing the research on that. Comprehensive
problem.
and quality. We have hit the 2-hour-ish mark. Nick, Chaos Knights, they also are getting an update in Engine War.
They are. So speaking of comprehensive and quality, my notes are not that.
Did you do the notes earlier and then you accidentally lost
before we do the
them?
next one? Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I did
Pardon
the
me?
notes earlier, but then I.
Rob, would it be okay to go and get a quick beverage before we start
Yeah,
the
help
next
yourself.
one, so I can stay
Help
hydrated?
yourself.
Thank you, mate. I'll see
Yeah,
you in a minute.
let's all just take a moment and have a chat. What does everyone think? How's things? What does everyone in the Twitch chat think of the rules? I run breaches on my screen, but if the plane can carry at least 10 man, I'm filling a couple with Fulgurites. Talking about the Electropriests, Nick. Everyone in AdMech, weirdly, of all the things that you would think an AdMech player would want to play with, they want to take a pretty human-looking Electropriest and get into combat.
Doing jazz hands.
Yes. Electric jazz hands is what people want. Tom did great there, didn't he?
Yeah, really, really in depth.
Yeah, he always takes it serious, but he is an angel. And yeah, he's super great. He's great to be here.
But what about that hair, man? What about that hair?
What about that hair? There we go. So Russ says, if I was given a choice of Necrons or Toasters, I'm taking Necrons, which is obviously a mistake.
100%.
Yeah. You and me will have to have a robot civil war at some point, Nick.
Yes, definitely.
Necrons versus the Admechosaurus. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to, because there's also in Engine War, there's also demon updates as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because I'm hoping that they get it. Look, because it seems like what we said earlier, Admech are getting an almost codex size update to their rules.
Yes.
The Codex Demons was often described as a pamphlet, not an actual codex.
Yeah, by us.
By us. So I'm hoping that this is also a codex-sized release for Demons as well.
I have.
More like because it was divided up into the 4 different gods. You know, each god only really got like a few stratagems per allegiance.
Yes.
So I'm hoping they get a bit more.
Actually, I have the contents of the Engine War book actually. So for Chaos Demons, they are adding stuff in for Shilaxi, Celeste, basically the Hedonite stuff that we saw released, right? And then Chaos Demon Stratagems are 2 more pages, so page 92 to 94, which is as many pages of stratagems as they had in the old codex. So an additional 4 an additional 2 pages of stratagems doubles the volume of stratagems, which is pretty big. Yeah. And then there's also a entire page. Somehow it's a 2-page spread for Exalted Bloodthirsters, a 2-page spread for Exalted Lord of Change, and Great and Clean One and Keeper of Secrets. So I feel that, I don't know about you, but maybe they might be adding more to it. Maybe you've got Exalted Bloodthirster 1 with a load of different relics, artifacts. You know, maybe it's the datasheet and then a bunch of warlord traits and relics that they could take, and that could be super exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what points level they put them at, whether they make them a narrative-only sort of points level, like the Supremacy suit, where it's like 1,000 points or 2,000 points or whatever, or if they make it like a 500-point unit, so it could be like a knight-sized model.
Are we talking about Stompers, guys?
We should do. Chaos. We're just talking about the number of pages of stratagems that you're going to get for demons, and you get 2 pages of stratagems in the Engine War, and that's as much as obviously they got the Codex. So actually, that's really good.
I mean, that's the same as Grey Knights, to be fair. So it's totally even.
Chaos Knights don't get any stratagems. They get the Dreadlords of Ruination, whatever that is, and then they get They get the household stuff. Imperial Knights get some new warlord traits, and they get some Quest of Allegiance oaths, household traditions, and it doesn't look like anything else. But then
there's going to be some.
I can go through the
there's going to be some
later.
stratagems.
I've done some notes on Imperials as well.
Yeah. Well, so and then they've got the cohorts of the Forge Worlds is actually 2 pages. The Holy Order Warlord traits is 2 pages as well. And the stratagems are 2 pages for Mechanicus. So the Mechanicus are getting a lot of stuff. But then it looks like there's no stratagems for knights of either variety.
There are some definitely some stratagems, yeah.
Well, then I don't know what I'm reading. Sorry.
I think in the code, in the contents bit, because in the Chaos Knights bit, which we'll go into in a second, they said that they're getting households, and each household will have like a warlord trait, a relic, and some stratagems, or a stratagem.
Okay.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, take it away. We're talking Chaos Knights. Chaos. All right.
So I had a bit of a foobar with my notes. I spent an hour or 2 this afternoon writing up notes, and then deleted it accidentally. So it's a little bit rushed.
Oopsie doopsie.
Please don't read Chaos.
So basically, they're in the new Psychic Awakening. The Chaos Knights are getting households. So in the Codex, they didn't get households, which was a bit disappointing, I think. Particularly as the Imperial Knights fellas got them. So there's 5 new households: House Lucius, House Herpetrex, House Chimere.
STDs.
They do.
Yeah.
So So those ones are iconoclast, and then there's 2 for the infernal households, House Vertrix and House Commentis. So each household is going to get a bond, which is like an extra special little rule, kind of like a Space Marine, like chapter trait or something like that. A warlord trait and an artifact and a stratagem. So I don't know if that means stratagems or a stratagem. Hopefully it's more.
Never tell the community team, to be honest.
Yeah.
They're more interested in dunking on people on Facebook than they are in writing articles where they actually present correct information.
Sick burns.
Yeah. God eat me.
And if anyone's wondering, the Chaos households are basically, well, not households because they didn't have households before, but Chaos Knights were effectively split into Chaos humans or whatever, but some sort of Chaos follower who had some sort of agency of their own that was in charge and piloting a Chaos Knight, or a Chaos Knight that was effectively a giant Chaos Demon. Yeah, so that's the difference between Iconoclasts and what was the other one again?
Infernal. So the Infernal is the demon one, I think, and the Iconoclasts will still be kind of human, but chaotic humans.
Yes, yeah. So that's the difference. So now they've all got households, and I really like the idea of a household of demon dudes. It's like, what are you doing? We're just like, who's inviting who over for dinner? That's the question.
Yeah, but you'd have to have a big dinner table for Infernal Knights because they can't get out with their night. Whereas the Iconoclast guys can park up their nights, get out, have a nice civilized cup of tea. But the demon fellows...
But like a drive-through.
That sounds like an episode of Come Dine With Me, dude. That'd be good. We've all played with Chaos Gods.
Yeah, Come down with me. I have a legion of Krieg warriors for us to feast on.
Voting disgusting.
So sorry, carry on, Nick.
Okay, so they've teased a few things. They've teased some traits, like a bit. They've done like one of each. They've done a trait, a warlord trait, a strat, and some relics. So one of the Iconoclast households, House Herpes, has released a trait. So Iconoclast, their trait already is they get +1 attack and -1 an extra AP on their combat attacks if they charge or are charged, etc. So they get +2 wounds to all their knights, but +1 if you're a war dog. So your Knight Tyrant, which is the Castellan version, would go from 28 to 30 wounds. Like a standard knight would go up to 26, and a war dog would go to 15.
Which is pretty good, considering you'll be burning through wounds sometimes anyway.
Well, the infernal household is the ones that take wounds to get buffs. So
no. What I mean is you don't have access to anything like Machine Spirit Precision, like Imperial Knights do, and therefore you've got a little bit of an extra buffer before you start hitting that.
Yeah, you've beat me to one of my points, Tom. How dare
sorry,
you?
bud.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to go and say. Yeah, because they don't have access to that. The more wounds you have, the better, because you're just hanging on in there and not dying. But I'd love them to get something like that in the book, like the Machine Spirit Resurgence strategy, but also it would kind of make them just the Chaos version of the Imperial Knight. So it is nice to have a bit of a difference, I guess.
Yeah. Their flavour is not being good.
Well, yeah. They haven't been amazing, but I think there's some cool stuff in there.
No.
Yeah, so it's a nice little buff for those guys. And then House Lucius, which is another Iconoclast household, they've teased a warlord trait for them, which is basically strike first in close combat. So I'm never really a fan of these things because it's only really relevant in your opponent's turn. Because if it's your turn and you're charging, well, unless you're stuck in an ongoing combat.
In fact, also what it means in your turn is that if you are fighting first, then do you fight in front of units that charged or no?
I think so, yes.
So that'd force you then to fight with that unit, even if it'd be beneficial to fight first with a different unit before you get interrupted on.
Well, let me just double check on the exact wording of that.
Well, so the activation wars in 40k have been there for a while, right? It's a thing. But
it equally has negative consequences though, because it does. I've just checked it. It specifically says always fights first, and then the only time it's on the same level as if it's your opponent's turn. So that means if you're fighting and you've charged with it and you've charged with a bunch of other units, you have to fight with that. And then your opponent goes, "Well, maybe it would have been nice to interrupt with this unit." It's like, well, it's actually can be a negative in scenario, right?
Tom, you're right. Absolutely, you're spot on. The only thing I will say about the activation wars in Age of Sigmar, to give some clarity to some people, is Always Strikes First got defined as actually before the combat phase, but after the charge phase.
All right, that's cool.
Now, I don't think that is the case in this situation, or there's nothing in 40k where it is the case. However, clearly rules like that obviously are synonymous, so you might see a ruling occur, but there are already units that get to strike first in the combat phase already in 40k.
Yes, there are like Howling Banshees and what have you.
Yes, so and they haven't been retconned, but then no one's tried to take advantage of it because no one does combat. So moving on.
But I think it's also because it's pretty rubbish in my opinion. I don't like them because you get the same thing from charging. So this warlord trait is there's way better ones in the Knight Codex, like +1 attack or plus the extra bonus to move and things like that, which is way better than this one, because this one is only really going to be good if your opponent doesn't know you have it. So it's going to be a gotcha situation, and if they know you have it, they're never going to charge you and fight your knight unless that's all they have combat. They'll just shoot you. So
It's a nice anti-Smash Captain tactic though. Like,
I guess so.
You know, if the only
Then
tool
you just
that you
fight
have
with Smash Captain first, though, right?
Pardon me?
But then you just fight with a Smash Captain first, right? And then once that has hit, if you want to fight next anyway, you could always spend a 2CP to interrupt. The question is, what's more worthwhile, taking this Warlord trait and assume this situational Warlord trait, or just spending a 2CP if in that specific situation you need it, especially in events where you can't change your Warlord trait between the games.
Yeah.
And also, in the Smash Captain scenario, if he charges you, the warlord trait says you fight first, but if other people have the same rule, which you do get by charging, it's whoever's turn it is gets to choose first. So the Smash Captain charging would still fight before you.
Yeah.
So rubbish in my opinion. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
House Lucius or Lucarius. So it's the third Iconoclast one. We just done
that one. Yeah, it's strategy.
Chimere, Iconoclast again, and it's a stratagem. In the shooting phase, units within 3 inches on a 4+ take D3 mortal wounds.
Yay!
I think again this is pretty weak because to get on with average dice, you need 2 units near you to do 2 mortal wounds. So that's 2 mortal wounds for 2 CP. That doesn't really seem like a good trade of CP to me. So you're going to need a lot of units nearby within 3 inches of you to actually get much use of this. Maybe if you're...
Mortarian's Fart is better than this.
Sorry?
Mortarian's Fart is objectively better than this, just to put that into context.
Yeah. And I don't like it because it's on a 4+ as well, and it's D3, and it's a really short range, and it's in the shooting phase. I feel like this would be better sort of like in the combat phase when you've charged a load of stuff, rather than having to be stood in the middle of your opponent's army with lots of units to get good value out of within 3 inches. So it's not a particularly good one, in my opinion.
No, that's not great.
But don't like it that much.
Unfortunately, no.
So if they do only get 1 strat, this is really disappointing because that's rubbish.
Well, maybe you get some better ones for the other 4 trees, right?
Hopefully, yeah. Maybe they've got a really good relic.
Maybe they've got exactly.
They've sort of balanced it out that way. House Vetric or Vextrix. So this is the first Infernal Household one. So their sort of trait is in the start of the turn they can either take 1 mortal wound and get a random buff out of +2 movement, +1 toughness, or +1 strength to one of their weapons, or you can take D3 mortal wounds to pick which buff you get. So they have access to a new relic, which I really like.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, I really like this one. So you get +1 to move. So that's already comboing really nicely with the Infernal trait of being able to boost your move already. So you could get +3 move with this already, making you super fast. You get +1 damage to your Chainsword or your Fist. So obviously that's if you're going to hit another knight or another big tank, each damage going through is much bigger. And the best thing is you get +1 to your explode rolls. So I know Tom loves it because he loves lobbing a knight in someone's face and exploding it on purpose.
Did you say lob or lorry? Because either one I like. Yeah. What are you doing? I'm lorrying this knight right in someone's face.
some logistics.
That
to
can
get this
be a
knight in
new
your face.
term, I guess. We can add that one to the workbook.
Yeah.
Work out fine.
Yeah, so this one is great. So we talked about a couple of weeks ago, like unit archetypes, unit like keywords and things like that. And one of the terms that we kind of said but didn't fully agree on was like a grenade unit. This is the perfect grenade unit in my opinion, because you can make it really really quick. Because the knight is going to be movement 12, you can boost its movement, make it unit 14, plus what's movement
with a
15.
relic, right? Yeah,
15 with the relic. You're charging in, you do a load of damage, and then when it dies, the Chaos Knights do have access to a stratagem, 2 CP, to make it explode on a 4+. With this, it's making it on a 3+. So it's going to run in really quick, smash a load of stuff, and then explode spectacularly.
Full tilt it as well, right? Have you got access to a full tilt style stratagem, right?
I don't think they have a full tilt strat, but they may do. I'm not 100% sure.
I think they do.
No, I don't think they do.
Fair play. That kind of sucks, but never mind.
But I think the relic is pretty nice though.
Oh yeah, relic's good though.
Yeah. Okay, where am I?
You're on Vectrix Heretic Power Core, and so we're going to Encircling Hounds.
Power Core.
The Clementis stratagem, mate.
Okay, so
but before we do that, I just want to say a big shout out to Dude Our Day, because he's been here since the beginning. Loads of love. He says, I'm not sure Games Workshop could deliver on the hype for 9th. I mean, they couldn't even get the font lined up on the new logo. I'll leave that to the end.
We'll do that the second one, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want
just on the logo. I don't mind the logo, but I don't like the line that goes through the letters. I don't know.
It winds you up.
What does it add? Okay. So House Commentis. So they're another infernal household. This is a confusing stratagem in my opinion, and I don't think the article makes it any clearer. I think I don't know. Maybe I just can't read it very well. So I'll read it out. So use the stratagem during deployment. Select one Household Commentis War Dogs unit from your army. You can set this up encircling the foe instead of setting up on the battlefield. If you do so at the end of one of your movement phases, you can set it up anywhere on the battlefield within 6 of the edge and 9 away. And then this is the last. This last bit is the confusing bit, because it says the War Dogs Vehicle Squadron ability only takes effect when this unit is set up on the battlefield, not when it is set up encircling the foe.
So I'm guessing what that's
you
going
can
to
use
mean
the stratagem.
is if you use a stratagem and you deploy as a squad and you never split up into 3, right?
Yeah, it's because they're just clarifying the mechanic, aren't they? Otherwise, some people might be like, "Oh, you split it up and then you put it out." But in this situation, like you've got a squad of 3, you put them into encircling the foe, and then the very first time that they're set up and you deploy on the board, that's when then you can break them apart.
Okay, so you can't bring one on the left, one on the right.
No,
and
it has
one
to be all
behind.
at the same place.
That's
all
what
at the
it's
same
clarifying.
time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just found that a little bit confusing because it felt like saying that you can't use the squadron ability
at all. Yeah.
When using this, which is a bit confusing. So basically, you can outflank a unit of War Dogs. So 1 to 3 War Dogs outflanking.
1 CP, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's quite cheap. It is quite cheap, so that's a good thing. But I'm not, and it does give knights, particularly Chaos Knights, some sort of deep strike or outflank threat that they didn't really have before. Obviously, we know in 9th edition that everybody's going to have access to some sort of reserve mechanic for units through CP. So this is just another one. So you could have like a unit of War Dogs and then 1 knight outflanking as well. So yeah, and it just keeps some stuff off the board for your enemy that can't, so they can't shoot it.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's pretty nice.
Makes sense.
And then they've got, the last bit is just you can basically make your own knight household. They've got 2 examples. So it's similar to the Space Marine one, and the other ones you pick two traits. Two
it's
abilities.
not primary and a secondary like the Admech one. It's more
it's just
any combination of the 2.
Yeah, it's just 2, and I'm presuming that you'll be able to dedicate them to Iconoclast or Infernal as well. So you get those, and then these 2 things as well. So one of them is Slayer of Kings. So when resolving an attack made by a melee weapon, except feat, you against a vehicle or a monster, add 1 to the hit roll.
Great.
It's okay for your fist because they're generally -1 to hit.
Yeah,
But I suppose it's good. Not necessarily great for the
Chainsaw.
gallant version with the chainsaw, because they're already ballistic skill 2 anyway, so that doesn't really help them out here.
No.
So it's all right.
It's
but
good
it's
for like the
specifically
Warden equivalent, right? If you want to build a Chaos Knight that way.
Yeah,
also, Dude saying, what else is in the CK book? Just the knights, so they would need to pay CP to bring some infantry in ninth. Well, I imagine you'll be able to run... Well, we don't know. Eventually, you might be able to run mono deck stuff in the next edition and then just get CP. So you might see knights with more CP than they had before. Interesting world. Interesting world. Yeah. Sorry, Nick.
But that Slayer King thing is specifically for vehicles and monsters. So it's a little bit limited in its value. And the last one they've showed off is Pinpoint Cruelty.
Oh my.
Or as I did write down in my notes that I deleted, Pointless Cruelty. When a model with this bond fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot or fight with, you can re-roll a single dice when determining the damage as a result of those attacks.
Do.
Love it, mate.
So brilliant.
Yeah, my favourite, that one.
It just has... It's just such a limited... It has such limited scope, like... You can re-roll a damage roll. And quite often knights have D3 or D6 damage. And yeah, I feel it's only really going to be relevant for your D6 if you go with a 1 or a 2. So if you get any of the D6 damage through, it's only relevant 1/3 of the time. Or like your D3s, again, it's only 1 or a 2 you're going to want to re-roll. So it's not great, but you can't always expect all these traits to be amazing.
Well, no, do you feel? I feel like there's a significant difference between what we've read for Chaos, which really is like, it feels like almost nothing burger, and the Admech stuff is some significant information. Do you think it's because we've had a codex for them so recently, or
what for the Chaos Knights? I don't know, possibly. Yeah, it could be that. But like it felt like the Imperial Knights codex was way better than the Chaos Knights codex.
Yeah, way better. Way better.
And so far, out of all the things that they've teased, there's been one thing that I liked, which was the relic, the +1 to move, +1 explode relic. And I hope that there's, because they've said there's just like one warlord trait, one stratagem per, and a bond per household. I hope there's way more than one stratagem. But
yeah, it's super odd that I don't want to, like, I know. Like, Games Workshop doesn't like Chaos, but if you compare like Chaos Demons to like we talked about how undersold the Chaos Demons book was, like, although people were doing really well with it at competitive events, so but it was like, it wasn't very interesting. And then you look at the Imperium stuff and how many rules they get, like, and a great comparison is Chaos Knights versus Imperial Knights for like the volume of rules that they got. And the extra stuff and the viability. Like, I remember when we talked about Imperial Knights, we did the review show on it. It was just like, there's so many things you could do with the Knights, really, even if they're not very competitive, or they're not as competitive as the best way to run them. But Chaos Knights, it was like meh, just a nothing.
The Imperial Knights book was very, very good, so it's kind of like a high bar to compare yourself to as well. I don't know if they oversold to themselves the value of double shooting weapons on the Knights. And that was possibly why they didn't like fill it full of more stuff, because they thought that could be really, really good. But I get, and also we don't know when this went to print, right? Like, it could have gone to print like a couple of months after Chaos Knights got released.
It's true. It's very true.
So it didn't feel like it needed that much support.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's some interesting things you can do with Chaos Knights. It's just, I mean, I don't know whether the difference is that the fact that Imperial Knights have Machine Spirit Resurgent. Is it as simple as that they have that one stratagem that allows them to act on full bracket?
It's definitely a big part, though.
It's huge, isn't it? So I think if Chaos Knights had that, I think they'd be, I don't know, I feel like they'd be definitely almost on par.
Yeah. And Phil Greenwood does make a good point about how easy it is for Imperial Knights to get the CP batteries, but I do think you can do that with Chaos Knights as well. And you can do that specifically with demon detachments of 30 Brimstone Horrors and 2 Zeech Heralds, right? Or 30 Cultists and 2 Cheapo Lords.
Yeah, you can, but I don't think it's as good as the Loyal 32, because the Loyal 32 get orders with like move and stuff like that. Whereas the Naughty 32, they're the same points and roughly pretty much the same stat line, but you don't get orders.
Right,
So
but it's not like, I'm going to be honest, I've never used orders on my Loyal 32 because I'm just lazy.
I could. You should. They're sometimes
I
really
also
great.
haven't
by the
actually
way.
used the Loyal 32. I've used the Rusty 17.
Yeah. Well, they're
But-
not as good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nick,
Okay.
thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Nick.
That was
Pleasure.
great. Tom, thank you for what you did as well. Thank you.
Shall
to
we
me.
save the Imperial Knights for next week?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Because it's warm and I can feel
And it's-
myself
yeah,
flagging,
yeah.
and I'd rather everyone got some value out of the show. So I just want to say thank you to both of you and to everyone who joined us live as well today.
Yeah,
It's
cheers,
been
guys.
obviously it's a really exciting time for 40k, so 40k. So you can join us in the daytime every day, like when I do the stream streak. Sometimes we're talking 40k, sometimes 80 sometimes both. So that would be rad if you want to. Yeah, we do. So it's
know,
quite fun. You can join us every Thursday at maybe the brand new time of 7 p.m. We just need to get some confirmation off my show hosts. Every Thursday to talk 40k. But thank you to everyone on the podcast. Obviously, stay hydrated, and thank you to everyone on the Wargamer Patreon. Couldn't do it without you. But thank you to everyone who joined us live. Ixtab, I hadn't seen you in ages. How you doing? Dude, Day, Grubby, for Greamer, Colonel Cabbage. Have you guys got any shout-outs you want to make before we head off?
Not particularly. I did a very quick interview with another show. You can watch my Twitter, and that might pop up at some point. But apart from that, no, not really.
Okay. Nick?
I'm going to give a shout out to Amy, my GF. She's reopening her cafe on
Nice.
on Monday after shutting it down for the lockdown.
Yeah.
So
Alright.
so if you're in Nottingham, go to Umai Cafe in Oriental.
By the way, I have eaten there and it's gorgeous. Like, the food is outrageous. I'd like to shout out to the fellow who works at the local chippy next to me. He doesn't probably watch this show or even know anything about Warhammer, but he now has opened up and I can get myself some chips and curry sauce. And it's just
There we go.
nice. Yeah, and it's just nice.
I'm just going to confirm the Nickers thing. When we did the League of Nights, where Amy last came and did a lot of the food for the
Yes.
event, I think I ate 4 of them. After I got the microwave working again, just to reheat because I kept eating them. But it was really good. Definitely recommend.
Nice.
The food is great. Well, thank you, everyone, then. Big shout-outs. Have a great day. Enjoy. Oh, dude, Ade, thanks for donating 100 bits, because you definitely need some bits for some Necrons, don't you now?
Yeah, that's going on the Tesseract Vault Fund. You're not buying anything nice with it, Nicholas. You're buying a cube.
No,
and
Silent
doing
King
stuff.
Fund. It's the Silent King Fund.
No, you're buying a cube. That's what he's been
Oh.
doing.
Nick, are you actually excited about the Silent King? I never thought I'd see you excited for a model release.
Yeah, man. I mean,
No.
all the Necron models, I can't wait to get my hands on them. I'm going to do some weird shit with those models.
Oh,
Oh,
don't tell her.
We did actually. I actually haven't asked you even what you think of them.
I think they're awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah, really cool. I love the new destroyers with the 3 legs. I think I said before on the stream that I've converted one of my Necron models into a crab and one to like a scorpion. So I'm going to make the big
we've seen
new
them, I think.
destroyer dudes into like big crab destroyers.
You brought him on
So
the show
I'm
once,
going to
didn't
theme
you?
them.
So
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
you're going to have crabs.
I'm going to have crabs.
That's a great way to end the show.